Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in here to Murder Church. Thanks for being here this morning. Really appreciate it. We are going to finish up this Jack Kevorkian trial today. We're going to move on to something else. Thanks for being here, everybody. About to come at you. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Share this out. Hit the like button. Get it in the algorithm. Help me out. Coming at you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Murder Church. What is going on? Thank you for being here. That's the wrong one. Did I have a Murder Church one in here? Maybe I didn't. Yeah, there it is. Boom. Murder Church. What's up, everybody? Good morning. I'm still waking up. Holy shit. Stayed up way too late per usual. Also want to wait to see if that chat showed up. There it is. Thank you for coming in here. Hope everybody, like I said in the opening, had a great weekend. We are going to today finish up. We got the closing arguments here. Let me look at what we're looking at first here. Prosecution delivers their closing argument, and then we have defense closing argument, and then prosecution rebuttal, and jury instructions, and then the verdict. And we're going to cover all of that here today, baby. Woo! Murder Church. What's going on? I can't forget the bells, so I'm going to give them out early. Let's see if we can lure Viv in here. Let's see. With the bells. It's usually what gets her going. Wakes her up. Boom. The bells. The bells. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Oh, shit. Kaylin hanging out in here and shared this out. Hell yeah, Kaylin. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Kaylin is absolutely amazing in the community and has a very large following herself, so I really fucking appreciate that. Anybody else, do the same. Go out there and share it on X, share it on Facebook. Let people know. Really appreciate that, Kaylin. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Got to get the bells going. Got to get the bells going. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Miss Deanna, Bonnie, Sheila, Jersey Jen in here, Dizzy, Disney Nerd hanging out, Charlotte. Oh, man, midday right now. In the UK, coming from Charlotte. That's awesome. Love that. She's hanging out all night. Feral Friday, too, man. Feral Friday was a good one, guys. Sweet Lou coming through here. Murder Church, hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Aspiring court reporter Sarah. City Kitty. Alligator Ashley, my favorite name, coming through here. Debbie Blair. Everybody, thank y'all so much. Yes. Charlotte Cross coming through here. What's up, Charlotte? What's going on? Lily Polly coming through here. Yes. Nice. Everybody jam-packed in here this morning. That's what I like to see. Hello, Spring. Hope I didn't miss anybody. I'd like to say good morning to everybody, baby. That's what we do. And oh, there he is. Jay's walking through the door. Jay just walked through the door, kicked it in. Boom. What is up? That's what I like to see. What's going on, Jay? How you doing, man?
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
Not messing around. And I forgot I had this soundbite. The other day, I was like, man, I need to change out a few of these, and I've still got this one. I've only used it for one show, one episode.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. At the Pontiac Silverdome, I lifted Hulk Hogan high above my head and I slammed him down. I slayed the giant in front of 93,000 people, brother, with the 60-inch pythons.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Oh, too early in my throat. Oh, God, what have I done? What have I done? All right, let's get in here. Let's see what's going on. Start her out. We're right here. This is where we are starting. Woo, baby. Uh-oh. Charlotte's getting ready to fly home. That's what I saw. I saw that this morning. I haven't replied to you yet. That's fucking awesome. That's cool as hell. Be safe, too. When you fly out there, Charlotte. Looking through the chat here just real quick. That's a midday, right? 2:12 p.m. Is that not midday? It feels like a midday. That feels like a midday to me. All right, yeah, let's jump in here, guys. We'll get her going. I'm going to get woke up. I've got some coffee here. I've got some freaking water here. Let me get the Murder Church logo up here so we can block that Court TV logo. And then let me make sure it's as large as it needs to be. I think that's pretty good. I need to get the chat off the screen. I was doing that for Murder Church. Not Murder Church. Fuck, Feral Friday. Feral Friday was crazy, y'all. Feral Friday was super fun. Okay, a little update. I've been hyping up and talking about. Okay, so Idaho 4 episode 3. It's ready. Honestly, when we're going through this, I'm going over there right now to Adobe, and I'm just gonna. There's a couple of little things I still need to do, so I don't want to sit here and say maybe by the end of the episode I'll have an answer. That's how crazy it is, because I'm like done. It's finished, but there's a couple of little edits I want to put on, just like a couple of slick things, and so I mean it's right there. So we'll see. We'll see whether I drop it today or later this week. But it might be today because it's ready to rock and roll. And I'm sure I'm tired of waiting. So I don't, yeah, we'll see. I'm about to look at it right now. Also, I did about 5 hours on it yesterday. I feel real good about it. What is that? It's so strange. Oh, I know. Hold on. I'm an idiot. Welcome to Murder Church, everyone. Thank y'all so much. I really appreciate it. Seriously. Especially when you come through and watch me fix the show live in real time. Boom. Get the doctor where we can see this fella. Love Dr. Kevorkian. Sad to see Dr. Kevorkian trial go in a lot of ways. It's been an emotional roller coaster. One day I couldn't even be on screen. Like, it was rough. So... all right, guys, let's rock and roll. Get in here. I'm sure the sound's good. I'm sure I'll be pausing and talking as we go, but let's go.
The lawyers will agree that the jurors are present in the courtroom, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Tiger, you agree the jurors are here?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, member of the jury, this is the time for the closing arguments or closing statements by the lawyers, which is the opportunity for the lawyers to speak to you about the evidence, what they think the evidence has shown. Keep in mind, as I have said to you before, that what the lawyers say at this time is not evidence in the case, but the opportunity to speak to you about.
All right, there's been some crying on here for sure, but that day I was an emotional wreck. Like it was like I was sobbing. I had to mute myself back here. It was a questionable day. Like everything.
The evidence and the theories of the evidence. Now, if in the course of their statements to you, something is said that you collectively recall differently, let your collective memories control as to what that is. Surely not purposely or intentionally misstate the fact, but trying to recall things over several days, surely one can make mistakes. Also, in the course of their statements to you, the lawyers have the right to speak to you about matters of law and applying the facts to the law and so forth. But again, I remind you that the final statement on the law will be the instruction that I will give you at the appropriate time. Procedurally, for the arguments, the prosecution having the burden of proof speaks first, then the defense counsel, And after the defense counsel speaks, the prosecution may come back before you to make rebuttal remarks to those made by the defense. So now, if you give your attention, we'll have the closing statements by the attorneys. Okay, Mr. Kenny?
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Ladies and gentlemen,
Let's hear that one more time. That's a dear Lord. Listen to the jury. Looks like a comedy movie.
good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, none of us would have wished Lou Gehrig's disease on anybody. None of us would have wished any pain and suffering on Thomas Hyde. None of us would have wished that Thomas Hyde die at such a young age. But ladies and gentlemen, for purposes of this trial and why you're here today, the morality or the wisdom of Thomas Hyde's choice to take his own life is not on trial. The wisdom of the assisted suicide statute itself is not on trial. Ladies and gentlemen, what is before you is the issue of whether or not Jack Kevorkian assisted Thomas Hyde in his suicide. That he knew that Thomas Hyde intended to commit suicide. That Jack Kevorkian provided either the equipment or did an act to help Thomas Hyde commit suicide. And that when he did so, he did it with the specific intent of causing his death. Now, you heard back in the opening statement at the beginning of this case, you heard Mr. Feiger get up and tell you what he felt was a bombshell. That this case didn't even happen. This event didn't even happen in the city of Detroit. Didn't happen on Belle Isle. It happened out in Oakland County. And why does he tell you that? Because as part of our proofs, what we have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt is that the assisted suicide did take place in Wayne County. And that by telling you that, well, it didn't really happen here in Wayne County, it happened out in Oakland County, that you would then find him not guilty, and then he would never be prosecuted after that for the Thomas Hyde incident. But keep in mind, when you were told that bombshell that the defense claims, when you were told that was told to you after you were told something else. And what was that something else that Mr. Feiger had mentioned to you? That Dr. Kevorkian wanted the people of the city of Detroit, he wanted a jury here in Detroit to resolve this important issue regarding the violation of the assisted suicide law. And that's why he came here. He didn't want Oakland County to resolve it. But what's he telling you, though, in the other argument? The other argument about where it took place, he's in essence saying, we brought our business down here, we brought Thomas Hyde down into Detroit so that these citizens of Detroit could decide this important issue, and then turns around and says, well, wait a minute, we want you to find him not guilty because it really didn't happen here in Detroit. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, That's an insult. And when you consider the evidence in this particular case, I want you to think about what evidence was presented as to where this happened, and to use your reason and your common sense that you have all gathered through your life to decide where this event took place. And I want you to keep in mind what happened on August the 4th, 1993, in the afternoon. You saw that tape on rebuttal, the last piece of evidence that you saw. And what was that tape? This is a tape some 6 hours or so after the police stopped Dr. Kevorkian with the body of Thomas Hyde in the back on Belle Isle. 6 hours after that, out at Mr. Feiger's office, there's a press conference. And at that press conference, as you can see, right in full view of the camera, not only is Mr. Feiger there, but also Dr. Kevorkian is standing right there as well. And what is said about this particular incident? What does Dr. Kevorkian's lawyer, his spokesperson, say about this particular incident involving Thomas Hyde?
This man doesn't talk with his hands, he talks with his entire upper body.
Some 6 hours after the incident, with Dr. Kevorkian standing right at his elbow, what does he say?
I'll be glad to answer any questions. Again, Dr. Kevorkian isn't going to be answering any, and Heidi Fernandez isn't. Yes.
Jeffrey, what does Dr. Kevorkian mean when he says he assisted in the suicide? Can you or he explain more specifically?
You have all been covering this story now. Heidi, you can come in here. For now over 3 years. I think it's significant, and I think it's apropos that Thomas Hyde died in a beautiful park setting in Belle Isle in Dr. Kevorkian's what's been described as a rusty old white van, but actually is truly a really kind of nice van, and there's nothing ignominious about that.
So within hours, the statement is made to the press, made to the world. It happened on Belle Isle. And why did it happen on Belle Isle? I think that's clear. Because he wanted people in Detroit to address this issue. You see on the tape Dr. Kevorkian standing right next to him? You see anything about Dr. Kevorkian reaching over and tugging Mr. Feiger's sleeve, saying, whoop, wait. No, it happened. No, don't say that, don't say that. And then what do you have after that? The next day, there's another press conference. The other tape that you saw, introduced by the prosecution. And what does that tape say? We have, once again, all the media assembled at Mr. Feiger's office, all for the purpose of giving information out to the media and out to the general public. And when you saw that tape, what's the conclusion that you drew? The conclusion that you drew, as did everyone, is that Dr. Kevorkian was merely confirming what his attorney had said just the day before to the media, that it happened on Belle Isle. In fact, Dr. Kevorkian in his own testimony indicated that when he made those remarks, he was intending to mislead people into believing that it had happened in Detroit. That was his intent. And now, the defense comes in with what they claim is this bombshell that it happened out in Royal Oak. But ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to think about that evidence. Think about the statement that Mr. Feiger made, which you can consider. That what's said on this tape, even though it was mentioned by Mr. Feiger, you can consider that as evidence against Dr. Kevorkian. Think also about what Dr. Kevorkian said the next day I'm trying to make this easier for Mr. O'Hare. I want to provide Mr. O'Hare with the additional information that he needs so he can bring these charges and resolve this issue. We can meet this issue. And then you couple that together with the other evidence that was presented. Remember Officer Banks, Anita Banks? She testified she was the only officer working on uniform patrol work on Belle Isle the morning of August 4th. And what does she say? Sometime between 8:10 and 8:30 in the morning, she's driving her patrol.
My camera's doing something weird. I want to see if it's doing it on the full screen. What the fuck? Weird. Did it stop? It's almost like it's like glitchy. Just started though. Weird. Hold on.
Patrol car around Belle Isle. She's driving over by the zoo and she sees a van. A van that she identifies as Jack Kevorkian's van. And she says it arouses her concern and her suspicion. Why does it arouse her suspicion? Does it arouse her suspicion because here's this van next to all these people having coffee breaks? No. It arouses her suspicion because, as she said, it was all by itself and there shouldn't be anybody around there. She looks inside and there isn't anybody in the van. And she can't see anybody in the cabin of that van. She tries to run the license plate in the computer, but the computer isn't working. And she says she's there for a few minutes. Doesn't see anybody either come in or get out of that van. And then she says, she goes on about her business, she runs some errands, and then she's back around 9:40, and she gets the word from Inspector Arthurs there on Belle Isle that Mr. Feiger has arrived and they're trying to find Dr. Kevorkian at the zoo. And lo and behold, she sees that same van again as it's driving on Riverbank Drive toward the Harbor Master area as well as the direction of the Belle Isle Bridge. Dr. Kevorkian is interviewed. He's talked to by Officer Banks. And he says, well, he's been there an hour and a half. You ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, in light of all of the testimony that you've heard, keeping in mind, Dr. Kevorkian had had experience some several months before with the Detroit Police Department, and specifically with the Detroit Police Department Homicide Section. Does Dr. Kevorkian arrange ahead of time to call homicide or call Sergeant Day, who he had met before, or come down to 1300 Beaubien? No. He's going to go to Belle Isle to report an assisted suicide.
Dr. Kevorkian during this has been reading a book, I mean, smiling, being, just himself. Like, he's not even worried, quite honestly. Either way it goes, I don't think.
Place in Royal Oak.
But I think he knows
Ladies
the way the
and
public's
gentlemen,
thinking,
it doesn't make sense. Is he going to be on the island to just simply make a report and be on that island for an hour and a half? Just to make a report? Certainly not. Ladies and gentlemen, the credible, the believable evidence, when examined all together, clearly supports the position that was taken when Mr. Feiger made that announcement on August the 4th. Belle Isle was selected because it was a beautiful park-like setting. Remember the testimony of Miss Fernandez. She told you Thomas Hyde loved the outdoors. He'd always go outside, even to smoke a cigarette. He'd be outside real cold. He'd think of reasons to be outside every day. It makes sense for Thomas Hyde to want to die in an outdoor park-like setting such as Belle Isle, as opposed to what was mentioned, the back parking lot behind Jack Kevorkian's apartment. Ladies and gentlemen, we submit to you that when you examine all the evidence, the evidence will clearly indicate that this took place on Belle Isle, and that this last-minute bombshell is nothing but a trick to try to deflect your attention from looking at the real issue. One of the real issues to take a look at is what was Mr. Hyde's intent initially. We heard Ms. Fernandez testifying this morning, and when we heard Ms. Fernandez, she said Thomas Hyde didn't want to commit suicide. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when you have to decide what someone's intent is, you have to decide what's in someone's mind. And that's a real hard thing to do. It's hard for all of us. But there are some ways that we know that we can really gain an insight and determine what someone's intent is. And in this particular case, we can determine someone's intent by the words they use, but more importantly, by the actions that they take. What's their behavior? What do they do? And ladies and gentlemen, you've all heard the expression, actions speak louder than words. And that's what we're dealing with here. Did Thomas Hyde intend to commit suicide? Did he commit suicide? What evidence is there? Well, you have the August 4th tape. Remember what took place right before Mr. Feiger's remarks about the fact that it happened on Belle Isle? Dr. Kevorkian addresses the media and he says, I assisted Thomas Hyde in his suicide, a merciful suicide. And the next day, on August the 5th, the other tape, Dr. Kevorkian says, I assisted Thomas Hyde in his merciful suicide. There was no question. One of the items that is in evidence, People's Exhibit number 9, ladies and gentlemen, I've had the front page blown up. This is the form that was made by Dr. Kevorkian. The text was made by him.
He wants this to be bad. He wants it to be way worse than it is. Like, he's just screaming at everyone. But he killed him. But no, dude. Like, have you watched anything? I mean, dude, I can't believe the state would go after Dr. Kevorkian with the video evidence of him talking to Thomas Hyde, asking Thomas Hyde multiple times over and over and over, do you want this? Is this what you want? Can barely lift a limb, okay? Scared to death of choking with every meal. Like, you know, being a part of this debilitating disease that has just conquered, sadly, his body. But not his mind. His mind is fine. His mind is clear, and he wants to end the suffering on planet Earth. It's gross, man, and they did this time and time again. I mean, Kevorkian also, you know, pushed the buttons because he wanted to know legally. He legally, let's get to the bottom of this. And I think renownedly, the public have been pretty loud and clear about this is the way. I mean, I know there's a lot of folks that don't think that, and a lot of people don't, probably because of religious issues and beliefs, which is, I get that as well. You know, that's instilled in a lot of people from their childhood. But man,
recall the testimony, I believe, of Margot Janis was that the black lines drawn through the text here were made because Dr. Kevorkian could no longer get drugs or chemicals to assist in suicide. But this is the form that Thomas Hyde signed on July the 1st. Remember the tape that you saw? The very poignant and very moving tape. The tape that moved all of us. But on this form, I urge you to take a look at the documents and the words themselves. The title of the
I know we all watched that video. I know it all touched our hearts. I know we all seen the true emotion, and we've seen it right here in front of our very eyes in this courtroom. But look at this. But look at the definition of this word. Look at this word here, and what it really means.
document
Fuck off,
says
dude.
request for medically assisted suicide. And then it talks about, it says, I, Thomas Hyde, Jr., the undersigned, hereby request of my own free will and without any reservation or extrinsic persuasion or duress, that my life of intolerable and interminable pain and or suffering be ended in the most humane, rapid, and painless manner with the help of a competent medical professional. The text, the words written by Dr. Kevorkian, but clearly words that Thomas Hyde had read to him, words that Thomas Hyde agreed to, and that he signed, and you saw that on the tape. What other insight do we have as to what Thomas Hyde intended to do? Look at the next sentence. I will end my life by breathing through a routine facial mask or plastic tent a lethal mixture of carbon monoxide in nitrogen gas. He indicates that he's going to end his life. That's what he wanted. Now, we heard throughout the trial from Dr. Kevorkian and all the other defense witnesses.
Look at hair back, bro.
Thomas Hyde
getting
just
hot in here.
wanted to end his pain and suffering. Thomas Hyde wanted death because death would bring an end to the pain and suffering. You know, and I know from the testimony that was presented, that on August 4th, 1993, when Thomas Hyde said goodbye to Heidi Fernandez at their Novi apartment, Thomas Hyde left to die. Now, ladies and gentlemen, also keep in mind what Thomas Hyde said on the tape of July 1st. Dr. Kevorkian said at one point, Tom, tell me, what do you want? What is it that you want? And he says, I want to end this. I want to die. His intent was very clear. The next question then becomes, well, what about Dr. Kevorkian and Dr. Kevorkian talking about he was just trying to end the suffering, but not trying to end death? And that gets us back to this particular provision of the statute that you will be advised about. And it says subsection 1, which the court will explain to you, subsection 1 basically talks about the elements of assisted suicide. But subsection 1 does not apply to prescribing, dispensing, or administering medications or procedures if the intent is to relieve pain or discomfort and not to cause death, even if the medication or procedure may hasten or increase the risk of death. And I think it's important, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about and think about for just a moment the word intent and talk about how someone's intent may be different from their motivation. And let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, I am walking out of my home late at night, walk down the street, and someone comes up to me with a gun and sticks a gun in my face and says, give me your money. I want your money. I have to have your money. I'm out of work. I don't have any source of income whatsoever, and I have to feed my children. I need money to feed my children. And I turn over my money. If we stop and we analyze the person who sticks the gun in my face, what's his motivation? His motivation is to provide for his family, to provide food for them. But what is his intent at the time he confronts me and sticks the gun in my face? His intent is to rob me and take my money. And that is the difference. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you remember when we had Dr. Klawans testify? He was the first expert called by the defense.
Not really.
And Dr. Klawans was clearly the doctor who testified in this case who had the most experience in the area of dealing with Lou Gehrig's disease and problems that are like that. He was the neurologist, had been a neurologist for some 30 years. He not only saw patients, but he also worked as a medical school professor and taught other medical students as well as medical residents. And Dr. Klawans gave some testimony, I believe, that was very helpful on the issue of how we interpret and how you apply section number 3. Dr. Klawans certainly admitted that with regards to ending pain and suffering, death certainly ends all pain and suffering. But keep in mind, when I asked Dr. Klawans some questions about the pain, the muscle cramping pain that ALS patients suffer. And he said that Valium and another drug were the ones that were the drugs of choice that were normally used by doctors in terms of trying to prescribe and control the pain and discomfort that ALS patients had. And he also indicated that frequently it didn't provide the relief that was necessary, that sometimes it just wasn't enough. So I asked him, well, what about increasing the doses? Does that work at all? And he said, well, for a minority of patients, it does. But for the majority, it doesn't. And so I asked him, well, what happens if you increase the dosage? Do you talk with the patient about that? And he said, yes. And he said they always discuss that, because if you increase the dosage of something like Valium, not only may it address the problem of muscle pain and be able to deal with that, but it also has another side effect. And that side effect is that it impacts on respiration. It impedes the ability, it hurts the ability of people to breathe. And if they're ALS patients, that's a big problem. And he said there can be a problem in that while trying to address the muscle pain, you can create a situation where you create a respiratory risk. And what kind of respiratory risks did he and Dr. Casson talk about? They talked about the fact that if someone is an ALS patient and they're having respiratory problems, they become more vulnerable to things like viral infections, things like pneumonia. So what you can see, ladies and gentlemen, when you examine this particular section and you hear the instruction on that section, I submit to you that what this means, an example of this particular section, involves a circumstance where a doctor is treating an ALS patient and the prescribed pain medication isn't working. And a decision is made after talking with the patient in order to deal with this muscle cramping, in order to deal with the pain and the discomfort you are having, we'll increase the dosage, but we want you to know, Mr. or Mrs. Patient, that if we increase this dosage in the hopes of trying to improve your pain problem, it may pose a risk for you and you may end up catching pneumonia. And if you catch pneumonia, you could possibly die. I submit to you that's what this particular provision is designed to deal with. It's designed to deal with the circumstance where a doctor who is in good faith trying to help in a creative and an aggressive fashion to deal with the pain and discomfort problems of a patient, but without trying to cause his death, and prescribes a medication that instead of having the pain relief function or benefit ends up causing side effects and problems that worsen a particular individual's health condition. That's not the kind of person that the assisted suicide law is intended to go after. But let's take a look at another intent in this case. And that's not just the intent of Thomas Hyde and what he intended to do, but more specifically, what was Jack Kevorkian, Dr. Death's intent in this particular case.
Wow. Wow. How fucked up is that? What the fuck, bro? He just literally brought out his comic book evil movie villain moniker, bro. Oh my god. What the fuck? Look at their faces. Look at their fucking faces, dude. Like, this shit's gross, dude. Like, it's insane. Like, that you could even give this closing with the straight face that you have. Making the points that you're making, even. Knowing what's happened in this case with Thomas Hyde. There's nothing malicious about this man whatsoever. He's not a murderer. He's not going out looking for victims. He doesn't even want to kill the people that are coming to him. He makes sure 1,000 times over. He videotapes that person letting the symptoms, how they can barely move. Them saying this is it. They want to go. Sign the papers. Talking to the family. Everyone's on board. It's fucked, dude. What the fuck? That's crazy.
In this particular case,
yeah, they're laughing.
We can look at words, or we can look at actions, or we can look at both to decide what Dr. Kevorkian was trying to do. What did he say on the 4th of August and on the 5th of August in those two news conferences that you saw the tapes on? Jack Kevorkian said, "I assisted in a suicide." Now, Jack Kevorkian then takes the stand and tells you, "I was not intending to cause death. I was just intending to relieve suffering." Those are his words. Keep in mind, when you examine those words of Jack Kevorkian, these are words spoken by someone who has also admitted from the stand that earlier on in this particular case, earlier on in this investigation, he was intending to mislead people by his words.
I think that's you, buddy.
So let's not just look at his words, because as we all know, actions speak louder than words, especially when your words at some crucial points in the past have, by your own admission, been deceptive. So what is Jack Kevorkian's intent? What was Jack Kevorkian's intent with regards to this canister? This canister that was filled with carbon monoxide. And you remember Dr. Kluans when he testified here? The expert called by the defense, a man who is seen more ALS patients than any other medical witness who testified in this case. And when he was asked, Dr. Klawans, in all of your 32 years of treating ALS patients, have you ever recommended or treated them with carbon monoxide gas? And he said, no. And when he was asked, you teach medical students, you teach medical residents, did you ever tell them that they should use carbon monoxide?
It's because he lost the ability to be able to get the drugs that he needed to properly do this. So that was the next best thing. Fuck, dude. Like, he still wanted to end suffering of folks that would have a much more prolonged life of suffering on planet Earth. Like, he brings out the canister because it looks so fucking sinister, right? It's black. It's got the rope on it. It's the gas canister that murdered these people. It's like a walking YouTube thumbnail, right? It's like the shock to get you in here. Fuck, dude. It's weird.
And he said, no. And when he was asked, do you consider it a poison? He said, yes. He also indicated that in the medical profession, in certain therapeutic circumstances, poisons can be used and are used. But when he was asked, what about this poison, Dr. Klawans? What about carbon monoxide? What was his response? His response was, no, we don't use carbon monoxide because carbon monoxide has no therapeutic value. So if it didn't have therapeutic value to help Thomas Hyde make it from one day to the next, or 1 week to the next, what was the purpose of using carbon monoxide? Once again, go back to People's Exhibit number 9, the form. And keep in mind, this is the form Dr. Kevorkian wrote. These are his words that he selected. Thomas Hyde was going to end his life. And he was going to end his life by breathing in a lethal mixture of carbon monoxide in nitrogen gas. Thomas Hyde was going to use the mask, the equipment, canister supplied by Dr. Kevorkian to end his life. Dr. Kevorkian told you in his testimony he has used this procedure, carbon monoxide gas, 18 times. He told you in his testimony all 18 died. Now, ladies and gentlemen, using your own common sense, using your own experience,
he's so mad.
When Dr. Kevorkian hooked up the tank to the tubing and hooked up the tubing to the mask and put that mask on Thomas Hyde's finger, or put the mask on his face, and then attached a string to Thomas Hyde's finger so he could do the final act himself. What do you think? Or put the
I want to get a picture of this. Goofy motherfucker.
Mask on his face, and then attached a string to Thomas Hyde's finger so he could do the final act himself. What do you think Jack Kevorkian was intending to do? You heard Dr. Kevorkian testify yesterday. You heard Dr. Kevorkian testify, I did not expect, I had no expectation that he would die. I surmised, I guessed that he might die. Ladies and gentlemen, that's an insult to you. That This man who's been involved in using this 18 times, where all 18 people die, takes this man out after he signed his form saying he's going to end his life by breathing in this mixture, and then he tells you, oh, I didn't know. He said that, well, you can never tell medically what can happen. Do you think for one instant, ladies and gentlemen, that Jack Kevorkian expected that Thomas Hyde was going to get 2 puffs or 2 whiffs of carbon monoxide gas, and then that the mask would be removed and Thomas Hyde would then be driven back to home in Novi and told, Mr. Hyde, I sure hope you feel better now? The whole purpose of this exercise was right from his own form. A request for a medically assisted suicide. That's what Jack Kevorkian says he's all about. Medically assisted suicide. He took Thomas Hyde to Belle Isle, and he took Thomas Hyde to Belle Isle to help Thomas Hyde end his life. Thomas Hyde was suffering, unquestionably. He didn't want to continue with that particular lifestyle and that deterioration that was going to lead to his ultimate death. And he asked Jack Kevorkian to step in and help him actively speed up that final day. And ladies and gentlemen, based on what has been presented, that indicates that a violation of the law has taken place. I would indicate to you, ladies and gentlemen, and remind you that when we went through the jury selection process, all of you were certainly exposed to having to answer personal questions, and probably a lot more personal than you ever thought you'd have to answer down in a courthouse. And also, ladies and gentlemen, during the course of that jury selection process, each and every one of you shared with us certain attitudes that you had about assisted suicide, about people suffering, and we all acknowledge that. We all have attitudes about it. But you all, each and every one of you, made a promise. You made a promise during that jury selection process that you wouldn't decide this case based on what your own attitude is. You wouldn't base this decision based on sympathy. That you would base this case, you would base your decision on 2 things. The evidence that has been presented in this courtroom, and you will base it based on the legal instruction that Judge Jackson gives you.
He's like, don't use any of your actual fillings. You don't need to fill during this. You know what? You don't need to fill during this. You have to just see what Dr. K did legally, quite frankly, with having Thomas sign the papers and make the video. I mean, you can argue it however you want, because the state deems assisted by, being terrible. That's within the state. But I mean, come on, dude. Like, we know what the hell's going on. And this is, what, 1994? Like, we've come a long way since then, but we're still not all 50 states or the entire country that's on board with this.
I remind you of that.
It should be a personal decision. Again, Dr. K wasn't just like, come on in, anybody. Yeah, you want to do that? Sure. No, it had to be a debilitating disease like this. It had to be a situation where your quality of life is out the window. It's gone. You have no quality of life. You can't just wake up, make your coffee, live any kind of notable life. It sucks, man.
To follow that and honor that commitment, as I'm sure you will. And I ask you that once you've heard all of the testimony, if you've heard all of the arguments and heard all of the instructions, and review it all, I ask you
Yo, Salvador.
while you acknowledge the fact that certainly there was a lot of pain and suffering on Thomas Hyde's life, and certainly we have sympathy for him and his family, the fact of the matter is the facts as presented in this case clearly indicate that Michigan's assisted suicide law was violated, and I request that you return a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kiger, you may proceed with your part of the argument.
All right, we're going to go into the defense. This is over an hour long. Nice. We'll get it going here. Thanks again, everyone, for coming in here. One thing I want to shout out, hope that Miss Deanna is still hanging out in here. She sent out a $1.99 time to pass the plate Sinners. Thank you so much, Miss Deanna. I really appreciate that. You're absolutely amazing. She was hanging out for a Feral Friday when we got a little bit wild on Friday. Per we basically do every week now. But I didn't know what this one was going to entail. Dan was out. I was basically solo. Did a nice little pregame on YouTube with watching some police footage again on the Rust stuff. And then once we went over to Kick, Kick just turns into what it should be. It's just a hangout, okay? That's usually how I use it. I'm either watching a movie, I'm watching a TV show, or just listening to some jams. Either way, it's usually copyrighted content that we could never, ever, ever do right here on YouTube. So please, I think that it should work in the chat here. Follow on Kick. And again, thank you so much, Miss Deanna. Let me see if this works. And we had a lot of new folks come over to Kick on Friday. If it doesn't work, I'll get the link. Those things, those actions or whatever the hell, rarely work properly. But I'm going to give you guys a Murch Church stinger, and we'll keep rocking and rolling. Thanks, guys. Love you all. Let's rock. See what he says. I'm interested now. This is some good stuff, man.
I won't talk.
Coming a long ways here.
After I sit down, Mr. Kenny will come back up here and try to convince you again something that I can't believe is happening in 1994. And I would respectfully request that each and every one of you, at the conclusion of this, not so much for what you're going to do for Dr. Kevorkian in the jury room, but for every other person who lives within this state. We're not just talking about now what we're going to do for Dr. Kevorkian. We're talking about an attempt today to put kindness, to make kindness and compassion, to make mercy for your fellow human being.
He's not even have to work that hard.
And that if you render kindness and compassion to any living person in the state of Michigan who cries and begs for the kind of help that Thomas Hyde, you go to prison.
Judge, I'm going to object. The reference to prison.
We discussed this, Your Honor.
Okay, I thought that we had this straightened out.
Got to ring it up. Already an objection, you mother. Come on.
The court make any decision about what happens, to a person and whether or not when they are found guilty.
Do you see that stare? Do you see that look? Do you see that look?
Possible penalty should not affect your decision, but certainly an option is for a person, if convicted, to go to prison. Understand that I make that decision. Okay. Right.
But today, in 1994, in April, we will send compassionate doctors to prison for helping us relieve our pain and suffering. It can't be. It can't be. We've been here before, you know. We've been here before. We were here in the 70s. We talk about the rights of women to control their own bodies. And we were here in the 60s when we talk about
still
the
here
rights
for that
of
one.
every people to be free and equal. And we were here in the 50s when everyone was a communist subversive. And we were here in the 40s when they went after the Catholics and the Jews and the Gypsies. And we were here in the 20s when they made the teaching of evolution a crime. And we were here in the 10s when they sent Margaret Sanger to prison for sending birth control information through the mail. And we're here again in the 90s. And we're here again with my esteemed defense counsel saying to you that Thomas Hyde should have been made as a matter of law to suffer the kind of death that everyone here testified he was going to suffer at the end. A death that we wouldn't wish upon our worst criminal. A death that only he was going to suffer, who had done nothing wrong. He who was going to gasp for his last breaths, and as Dr. Schwartz told you, all the meaning, the love, the existence, his control over his very life is destroyed at that when he says, why? Why don't I have the ability to decide for myself how much suffering I have to undergo before I meet my Maker? And Mr. Kenny says to you, I'm not trying to be dramatic, we end the right of all people to decide for ourselves and end the right of us when we are dying like Thomas Hyde was dying to look at somebody else in the eye and say, a competent medical doctor, and say, help me end my suffering. We end that.
Oh shit. There's one person that said this prick out of 29 votes. Who is right? Dr. K or this prick talking about the prosecutor? 3%. That's 97 to 3%. There's either one troll or one person that is on the prosecutor's side.
And we say to Thomas Hyde, we condemn you as a society to suffer a death that we wouldn't even impose upon our pets. What kind of people would we be? What kind of people are we that we would treat Thomas Hyde worse than our pets? Worse than a dog or a cat that was lying there begging, had no hope of survival. And we would say that was humane. And we would say to Thomas Hyde, you choked to death. Can't be. It can't be. Thomas Hyde's life and death can't be in vain. The suffering of Thomas Hyde and his ability to control his own destiny, to make a choice, to be a free American, cannot be taken away. Thomas Hyde cannot be made in his final hours and by his final act of freedom, of self-determination, of a decision that he said, I choose not to suffer anymore. He cannot be made a criminal by virtue of this horrifying argument that's made here today by Mr. Kenny, who claims to represent the people of the state of Michigan, but he doesn't. He represents a viewpoint that is so far in the past and so estranged and so distant from any person who feels the ounce of human kindness running through their veins. Thomas Hyde wasn't a criminal. His decision and his family's decision and Heidi Fernandez's decision to exercise free will and free choice.
Hell yeah. Just send him the password. He should be coming through here in just a second.
And say when his time had come, and when the disease was sure, when death was irreversible, when the suffering was unbearable, no one can say you're a criminal if you don't die the kind of death that every single person, including Dr. Cassim, testified he would have died. Because you understand, It's not only Dr. Kevorkian on trial, and it's not only the rights of all citizens of this state to make decisions, and it's not only every principle of kindness and compassion. Do you understand that Thomas Hyde, exercising freedom of choice, when...
Yo, Bob. Hey, what's up, man? Let me get you in here. Boom, boom. Hell yeah, dude. We send that out. Boom. Yeah, let me get... Hold on. Boom, boom. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I'm getting in here right now. Should be good. Let me change this name from Dan here. Let me take that.
Hey,
Still got Dan's name up. What's up, dude?
Oh, dude, sorry, dude. I overslept.
Oh, you're good, man. You've been on a cruise, right?
Yeah, but this is not a cruise. This is a jam cruise is music.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, but they play till like 5:30 in the morning, like every night of the cruise.
Oh, it's just a party every night.
There's not much sleep.
That's awesome, dude. So you're trying to catch up now.
Hard.
That's awesome. Well, hell yeah, dude. Yeah, welcome in here, man. Yeah, we did watch the prosecution's closing arguments. Kind of going crazy on that prick.
Yeah.
The chat and stuff. And yeah, now we're doing the defense, which, man, he started. I don't know if you've seen anything this morning.
Hold on. I gotta turn this one off. All right, there. I had the echo.
Oh shit, you good now?
Yeah, I'm good now.
Nice. And but yeah, have you seen anything this morning?
No, I literally just opened my eyes.
Oh.
I had my alarm set because I was battling the internet last night. Like our shit was down, so I was up later than I wanted to be, and then just slept right through my alarm, dude. So,
dude, no, I totally get it, bro. I actually stayed up way too late last night, man. Getting up, and every time I get on here on the fucking Murder Church, my eyes look insane.
I'm sure that's what mine look like too.
Yours are right now, yeah. Well, the coffee's got me though, so I'm starting to wake up. Austin Rain's gonna send in some love. $4.99. Absolving my sins. Love y'all. Hell yeah.
Love it.
And good to see you this morning, Austin. Love it. Love it.
So what I missed when I was gone, man? Anything crazy going on in the world of true crime?
Man, this week, no, not really. Honestly, I can't think of. I've been on the Rust stuff, dude. That Rust stuff's got me intrigued. Like, it's been actually really good.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to do what Sarah said here. She said, start the defense over, and I think I'm going to, dude.
Cool.
This starts out fiery. This is good, dude. This is good as shit, man.
That's really what I want to see.
Take that off here. Boom. And then I think I've got boom, boom. There we go. Yeah, dude, this is good, man.
Let's go.
This is now my closing argument. I won't talk again after I sit down. Mr. Kenny will come back up here and try to convince you again something that I can't believe is happening in 1994. And I would respectfully request that each and every one of you, at the conclusion of this, not so much for what you're going to do for Dr. Kevorkian in the jury room, but for every other person who lives within this state. We're not just talking about now what we're going to do for Dr. Kevorkian. We're talking about an attempt today to put kindness, to make kindness and compassion, to make mercy for your fellow human being a crime. And that if you render kindness and compassion to any living person in the state of Michigan who cries and begs for the kind of help that Thomas Hyde, you go to prison.
Judge, I'm going to object. The reference to prison.
We discussed this, Your Honor.
Okay, listen, I thought that we had this straightened out.
And watch this look that he shoots him right here.
Remember, the jury, the court make any decision about what happens, to a person and whether or not when they are found guilty. But the jury, they only decide that. So possible penalty should not affect your decision, but certainly an option is for a person, if convicted, to go to prison. We understand that I make that decision. Okay. Right.
But today, in 1994, in April, we will send compassionate doctors to prison for helping us relieve our pain and suffering. It can't be. It can't be. We've been here before, We've been here before. We were here in the 70s. We talk about the rights of women to control their own bodies. And we were here in the 60s when we talk about the rights of every people to be free and equal. And we were here in the 50s when everyone was a communist subversive. And we were here in the 40s when they went after the Catholics and the Jews and the Gypsies. And we were here in the 20s when they made the teaching of evolution a crime. And we were here in the 10s when they sent Margaret Sanger to prison for sending birth control information through the mail. And we're here again in the 90s. And we're here again with my esteemed defense counsel saying to you that Thomas Hyde should have been made as a matter of law to suffer the kind of death that everyone here testified he was going to suffer at the end. A death that we wouldn't wish upon our worst criminal. A death that only he was going to suffer, who had done nothing wrong. He who was going to gasp for his last breaths, and as Dr. Schwartz told you, all the meaning, the love, the existence, his control over his very life is destroyed at that when he says, why? Why don't I have the ability to decide for myself how much suffering I have to undergo before I meet my Maker? And Mr. Kenny says to you, I'm not trying to be dramatic, we end the right of all people to decide for ourselves and end the right of us when we are dying like Thomas Hyde was dying to look at somebody else in the eye and say, a competent medical doctor, and say, help me end my suffering. We end that. And we say to Thomas Hyde, we condemn you as a society to suffer a death that we wouldn't even impose upon our pets. What kind of people would we be? What kind of people are we that we would treat Thomas Hyde worse than our pets? Worse than a dog or a cat that was lying there begging, had no hope of survival. And we would say that was humane. And we would say to Thomas Hyde, you choked to death. Can't be. It can't be. Thomas Hyde's life and death can't be in vain. The suffering of Thomas Hyde and his ability to control his own destiny, to make a choice, to be a free American, cannot be taken away. Thomas Hyde cannot be made in his final hours and by his final act of freedom, of self-determination, of a decision that he said, I choose not to suffer anymore. He cannot be made a criminal by virtue of this horrifying argument that's made here today by Mr. Kenny, who claims to represent the people of the state of Michigan, but he doesn't. He represents a viewpoint that is so far in the past and so estranged and so distant from any person who feels the ounce of human kindness running through their veins. Thomas Hyde wasn't a criminal. His decision and his family's decision and Heidi Fernandez's decision to exercise free will and free choice and say when his time had come and when the disease was sure, when death was irreversible, when the suffering was unbearable, no one can say you're a criminal if you don't die the kind of death that every single person, including Dr. Cassim testified he would have died. Because you understand, it's not only Dr. Kevorkian on trial, and it's not only the rights of all citizens of this state to make decisions, and it's not only every principle of kindness and compassion. Do you understand that Thomas Hyde, exercising freedom of choice, when in the face of misery and suffering that no human being could ever undergo, was, if Mr. Kenny is right, conspiring to commit a crime along with Dr. Kevorkian, that we become criminals when we're suffering and dying? Isn't it a strange commentary, if what Mr. Kenny says is correct, that at the point in which the disease process is won, when death is sure and suffering can't be controlled, that we as people become criminals when we want to end our suffering? That we become criminals? And that compassionate people who feel that and say, yes, you have a right, and I can help you end that suffering, they're criminals too? And we house them in prisons? Have we lost all sanity? My God. Are we not human? Is it possible? Is it possible that this can be happening today? Is it possible that you can be going back into the jury room and deciding today whether kindness and compassion die in this state? And whether Dr. Kevorkian and Thomas Hyde and everyone like him and the 20 that went before him and anyone else who says, I, as an American living today, if I am dying, I have the right to decide how much suffering I have to go. Is it possible that a prosecutor in a court in the state of Michigan is standing up and saying yes? Is it possible that a prosecutor in this state today in 1994 is saying Thomas Hyde didn't have the right? Is it possible that a prosecutor is saying today in this courtroom at 225 that Thomas Hyde was condemned by the law of this state to die the most horrible death anyone could ever imagine? That's not possible. That's not possible. You're a jury. You are the conscience of the community. Of the 20 that went before, and of the 10,000s upon thousands that will come later, because none of us are ever going to get out of here alive. And some of us are not going to go into that good night as gently as others. And when anyone is like Thomas Hyde, when they've lost all control of everybody, when they shake uncontrollably with their muscles, and if they lay down, they have to choke, because can you imagine the terror of someone drowning in his own spit? And he's a criminal. And all the others like him who would say, I am a free person. It can't be. It can't be. No matter how sadistic, no matter how much they feel that they can control another person's body, no matter how much a person believes for themselves, it might be wrong, and if God intended us to suffer, then we'll suffer until the very end. I don't even believe the worst person with the most evil in their heart would ever condemn Thomas Hyde to suffer the death that he wanted to if he chose not to. And that's what Mr. Kenny's saying. It's not possible. It's simply not possible, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen under the law of this state. It didn't happen under any law. You see, I learned in law school, and I'm standing up for Dr. Kevorkian. I'm not just standing up for him, though. I'm standing up for all people who believe, like Thomas Hyde, like Heidi Fernandez, like Kelvin Thurman, like Dr. Harold Klawans, like Dr. Stan Levy, like Dr. David Schwartz, like Dr. Barry Bialik, like Sean Hyde, And like every single person who came in here, I'm standing up saying, I don't know if God owns my life, and I don't know if somebody else owns my life. But I know very well that the government doesn't own my very existence. And I'm standing up. What makes him so unusual, is not that he's standing up for something that's right, but that he's standing up in the face of the incredible use of force that's being used against him. And you stand between what he represents and what Dr. Kevorkian stands up and says it is the right of all of us. Between that force that would cause Thomas Hyde and everyone in his situation to suffer the kind of death that he chose not to, between that, what he wants to do, and the right that Kevorkian stands for, is you. And that's why it had to come to this. It had to come to this. It had to be a time when we weren't going to decide it anymore with judges, and we weren't going to decide it anymore with governors, and we weren't going to decide it anymore with legislators, and we weren't going to decide it anymore with prosecutors and police, and we weren't going to decide it anymore with doors being kicked down and little doctors arrested on the street and handcuffs behind their back and fingerprints and humiliations, and we weren't going to decide it anymore with having the families of people who chose to have choice and control. We're going to decide it the way we decide it in America. We're going to decide it by you. And each and every one of you came in here and you said, I promise to enforce the law as the judge instructs me and as I find the facts to be. And you, with all due respect, are going to stand up today and say, no more, never again. We're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. We're not going to.
Share that sound clip. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Man, this is a great closing, man.
Dude.
This is the guy, dude. This is shit I'm saying about defense attorneys all the time.
He's killing it, dude.
He is, dude. That
so much passion
was on point, bro. What a great analogy. Like how we put our pets down, you know.
Yeah.
Saint, that's an amazing analogy. I bet you that really, really, really struck home with the jury.
And
I didn't think of that, to be honest.
The majority of people have pets, man, and they can, they've had to unfortunately do something like that. And I mean, when it's different with people, but at the same time, when you're in a position and you have ALS, a disease that has absolutely just taken your quality of life and thrown it out the window, and you take your dog that's an elder dog, 14, 15, however long, they have different ages when they get to bad spots, but I mean, dude, if they can't move, they can't get up the stairs anymore, their joints start to go. I mean, when it's time, and I mean,
suffering.
That's compassion, dude. Yeah, you don't let that. We wouldn't let your dog just go. They can't get in the house anymore. You can't use the bathroom correctly.
Dude, it's worse for humans because we can actually communicate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Communicate in that kind of way. It's even more cruel to do it to human beings when we can communicate, even if we have to do it in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not able to speak, but you can write. Please, mercy.
Please do it now.
Yeah, dude.
Because if you're in your head, to get to that point to where you're like, I want this to be over, that's just not. You just don't get there, easily.
No way.
Well, that's horrible, man.
You're suffering, man.
Yeah, dude.
Me. That's got to be our choice. It's got to be.
Yeah, bro. Hold on, a little bit of more love coming through here. I've been seeing a lot of these anniversaries right here. We got Joanne coming through. Happy Sunday, y'all. Time for my day to start.
Whole year, dude. 12 glorious months.
Fucking Austin, dude. 12 months. That's insane.
That is amazing.
That's crazy. And then Joanne, 8 months.
Woo.
Wow. And then Jessica for Justice coming through here. $9.99.
Woo. $10 holla.
Hell yeah.
Ooh.
And I want to put her over. I know she's going to be streaming a little bit later on Kick. I think she's going to be streaming Love After Lockup. So yeah, definitely plug that in here for Jessica, and I'll get her link and put it in here. Follow her on Kick, man. She's awesome, and on Twitter. She's fucking one of the beautiful people of the true crime community that's trying to do the right thing.
Definitely.
And did I miss one in here? Yeah, I think that's it. Hell yeah, dude. Thanks y'all for hanging out too. Really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, sorry I was late, y'all. I was sleeping hard.
Update on the poll. I'll put a poll in here. Who is right, Dr. K? And I put this prick. Talking about the prosecutor, what's his name, Timothy Kinney, and so far it's 94% to 6%. There's a couple of people that like the prosecutor, so I think they're trolling. They're trolling.
Show yourselves.
They're trolling. Get in the chat. You're damn right.
Yeah, show yourselves. Show yourselves. Man.
Let me get Jessica's link in here, guys.
Take it anymore. This type of prosecution and persecution has got to stop. Thomas Hyde is not a criminal. Janet Atkins was not a criminal. Ronald Mansour was not a criminal. Donald O'Keefe was not a criminal. Sherry Williams was not a criminal. Sherry Miller is not a criminal. Elaine Goldbaum is not a criminal. Hugh Gale was not a criminal. The guy standing here accused of a crime who's never committed a crime in his life is not a criminal. What's criminal isn't that we're participating in this process. It's that it happened. And now we've got to stop it. We've got to stop it now. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not sitting here saying, like I'm sitting next to you trying to tell you what to do. If anything I say insults you or makes you take it, I'm trying to do the very best job. But I believe in what I'm saying. I truthfully believe in the right of every individual to make a choice. And I truly do not believe that under the wildest interpretation of a law, as Mr. Kenny tells you, Thomas Hyde was a criminal and Dr. Kevorkian is a criminal and they broke the law and it's a crime in this state to give kindness and compassion. You know, when I went to law school, I learned one thing. You know, the difference between what makes us free and what makes countries who have not an iota of freedom the way we do is this. In this country, under our laws and under our Constitution, everything is permitted unless it's specifically prohibited. That means that we're free people. We're free to make decisions about what we wear. No law says, Jeff Feiger, you can't wear a pinstriped blue and red suit on Thursday. No law says I can't, no law says I can, and I'm allowed to make a choice. The law doesn't say when I have to get up in the morning. It doesn't have to say when I get to sleep at night. It doesn't say when I have to go to the grocery store and when I don't. It doesn't tell me what kind of car I have to buy, and it doesn't tell me what kind of house I have to live in. And therefore, everything, unless it's specifically prohibited, is permitted. We don't need a law to tell us how to live. But in totalitarian countries, it's the opposite. Everything is prohibited unless Big Brother, the government, tells you it's okay. And unless the law says that you can cross the street at 10 o'clock till 5 o'clock, you can't cross that street. And unless the law says it's okay for you to do this at this time, you can't do it. And you understand what that means. What that means is that in certain situations, there are times that there are things in the wonderment of being a free person, which are so personal to our choices, so personal as to who we love, as to how we love, as to who we are, as to the decisions we make in life about what our lives will be and what roads each of us will go on. There are so personal choices against which government cannot intrude without losing all the elements of essential freedom. That's the basis of the freedom. And that's why we could never have a law, ever, and truly be a free people a law that tells us, like Mr. Kenny says, that you have to suffer until death, that you are required by law. We have taken over your life. We own you. Tom Hyde, you have ALS. Mr. Kenny opens up and says, we're all very, very sorry about Tom Hyde. But if you really listen to what he's saying, Tom, tough luck. You're gonna go a real bad way. And you know what? Because if I get, and I can convince you that Kevorkian's a criminal, there'll never be anybody standing up to help you, Tom, or you, or you, Janet Atkins, or anybody who can look a doctor in the eye and say, I've had enough. I can't stand this pain anymore. That's why Heidi Fernandez isn't on trial, because she sure as shooting helped her husband, but it's not a crime. That's why Neil Nickel isn't on trial. And that's why Margot Janis isn't on trial. You go after the head, and the body will fall. And it's only you that stand behind that axe that would chop down the freedom of every one of us. And that precious right that we don't need right now, because nobody sitting here well enough to listen to my voice right now could ever understand, including me, what the agony must be like of Thomas Hyde. What the agony must be like. It's directed at one thing. Because somebody somewhere thought they could pass a law.
And they get Botox.
What is it?
Allison said that Kevorkian, she said this is pre-Botox. Kevorkian should get Botox. I'm like, what?
When did Botox become a thing? 2000?
I don't know, but Kevorkian shouldn't get it.
I was just commenting on his forehead.
Because he's old.
Well, it was on mute and no one could hear.
Wow.
Except my husband.
You're getting tossed out there, Allie.
I know.
Under the bus. Under the bus. I was so offended by the Botox comment about Kevorks that I had to,
like, everyone needs to know this.
Right, and we're going to interrupt the whole thing just to tell them.
Nah, you're good. Yeah, let us know.
Didn't get away with it. They thought Mr. Kenny's interpretation of this law as he gave it to you is so astoundingly insensitive and almost devoid of human compassion as to be inconceivable to me in a free society. You see, somebody up there in Lansing realized that it couldn't possibly be that kindness and compassion can be made a crime. And therefore, if your heart is true, if your heart is pure, you couldn't possibly go to prison for rendering kindness and compassion to Thomas Hyde. And that's why I showed you the law at the very beginning. And it said, subsection 1. You all see this? You all see it? Okay. Subsection 1 does not apply to administering procedures if the intent is to relieve pain or discomfort and not to cause death, even if the medication or procedure may hasten. That means bring on death. If your intent is to relieve pain and suffering, you can't be sent to prison. If your heart is true and the pain and suffering is real and the right is absolute and the cause is right and the human being is begging, does any one of us think, do you really, any one of us think that Dr. Kevorkian is Dr. Death? That he likes killing people? That's why he said that, and that offended me. It offended me in more.
Yeah, Yeah, Kenny popped it out in his opening, the Dr. Death, like, using it brutally. Like, I don't remember what he said exactly, but I paused it for a minute, and it was awesome. Dr. K and him took a laugh about it, but it was just, you could just tell what he was doing. Like, it was like, oh, it was evil. Like, he's like, and yeah, you know, he's basically just like, and here we have, you know, Dr. Death. I was like, whoa, let's calm down, pal.
What a pimp.
Dude.
More ways than one, because it was intention. And it was intended to make you believe that you know him, you heard him, you heard Heidi Fernandez. You know, all these people, they not only became criminals at the end of their life, but their entire family became liars, too. You understand, a 66-year-old Armenian descendant of the Holocaust doctor who's never committed a crime in his life, who has led an exemplary life and who has stood up for all of us, and Heidi Fernandez, and Thomas Hyde, and Sean Hyde, and Dr. Levy, and Dr. Klawans, and Dr. Kasim even, and Dr. Bialik, and Kelvin Thurman. They not only, they became liars too, you understand. And that their intent really wasn't. And the real effect, because every single one of them testified that the effect of applying this procedure, and it was the only way, was to end his suffering. And the intent, unless you believe that Dr. Kevorkian has a death intent, and not, that he's not pure of heart, which he is, unless you believe that, then nobody here, and he has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, but I think this is beyond a reasonable doubt. What I find most offensive at all is usually in a criminal trial, first of all, you have victims. You have somebody said, somebody did something wrong. What's here? I got a prosecutor being helped by the Oakland County prosecutor. None of the police were against Dr. Kevorkian. Dr. Kasim wasn't. All the family said, what the heck is going on here? The family sitting over here saying, what is going on? We're being dragged through this, and Tom Hyde committed crimes, and Dr. Kevorkian committed crimes because Tom was dying of ALS and said, I can't take it anymore? Who ever heard of a criminal proceeding where the only one who's saying anything was wrong is the person who's sitting at the chair? No victim, no witnesses, no proof of anything. I mean, usually you come into a criminal case and you say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the prosecutor. We have victims here. We'll prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, he doesn't even know where the thing happened. Well, and then he says, well, gee, you know, why would Mr. Feiger and Dr. Kevorkian want to tell the press on that day or make it seem like it happened in Detroit? Like we're cooperating with him? After all the prosecutions? After all the insults and the attempt to degrade him and call him Dr. Death? No. It's to get in front of you. It's to get in front of you where you can stand up and say, no more. Nobody was insulting you. We were insulting him. And everyone like him who would stand up and say to us, you, Tom Hyde, are a criminal. And Dr. Kevorkian, you're a criminal because you seek the kindness and compassion that we wouldn't deny to our own animals. We call that humane. It's impossible. Impossible. You know, in this state, another part of this law allows doctors or anyone else to disconnect or withdraw life support or feeding tubes. So if a patient says to a doctor, I've had enough, I'm hooked up to this tube, I don't want to exist on tubes anymore, and the doctor or the nurse or the nursing home says, that's okay, I'll take out the tubes and you'll end your life. The way you'll end your life is you'll starve to death over 15 days. But we'll end your life. You can't walk. You're telling us to remove the tubes to starve you to death, and that's okay. And Mr. Kenny says, that's okay. But if Mr. Hyde wasn't unlucky enough to be attached to a breathing mechanism or a feeding tube keeping him alive. But if he was suffering the most horrible pain any human being could ever imagine, and he looks the same doctor in the eye and says, I have had enough. The pain is too great. I cannot stand. Mr. Kenny says, if the intent is to relieve his pain, even though it hastens death, that's a crime. And he's conspiring to commit a crime, and will put anybody who helps him, any compassionate family members or any doctors, in prison, and will convict them of a felony. That's why. If he was not, I can't help it if he's not doing his job. If since August the 4th, 1993, he never looked and saw that it really happened in Royal Oak at Dr. Kevorkian's apartment, where a number of other cases have happened, and he's mad at me for not telling him? Who does he think he is? That's like ridiculous.
They gotta be. That's a great comment. I bet they're just. It'd be like an SNL sketch or something. If they pan to the jury, they're just like in like raincoats, just drenched.
Windshield wipers on their face,
dude. Alligator Ashley, my favorite name in chat. That's amazing. How many times do you think the jury have been spat on during? That's. I cannot get that out of my head now.
You think Feiger's flying some little spittle all over the place? He's pretty adamant, man. He's pretty adamant.
Dude, he is, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just totally ridiculous. He comes up here and he says,
this is what you want.
Feiger didn't tell me how to try Dr. Kevorkian. He never did any. By the way, I never said, did I say bombshell? I think he's reading the paper too much. You know, and the judge tells you every day, don't read the paper and watch TV because that tends to be inaccurate. And his entire case is the TV stations. What kind of criminal case is this? What are we doing? When we're trying to make morality, when choice becomes a crime, you have these kind of things happen. And you have serious, serious dangers. Because if not for somebody whose heart is pure like Dr. Kevorkian, seriously intending to relieve pain and suffering, and unless I was in another courtroom, that's exactly what Dr. Klawans and Dr. Kassem and Dr. Bialik and Dr. Levy and Dr. Schwartz said, that the effect of this procedure was to relieve his pain and suffering, and there wasn't one thing else that could be done. Sure, it hastened death, absolutely. But if you disconnect tubes and allow somebody to starve to death, you're hastening death. You're not intending to kill them. You're intending to carry out their wishes. Mr. Kenny says that's fine, starve them to death, but if they don't have the luck of the draw and they don't get to starve to death and they have to choke to death, that's just too tough luck. It can't be. It can't be, and it's not. And every single one of the witnesses, and that's why you heard from everyone, unless they're all lying. We have a situation here where we have a prosecutor who has no witnesses, who shows you TV tapes, and then says convict somebody beyond a reasonable doubt when the statute doesn't even make it a crime. Because unless he proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Dr. Kevorkian's intent was not to relieve pain and suffering, but only to cause death, unless he proves that beyond a reasonable doubt, you say, and you stand up and you say, no, no, no. I've been sitting here. You were chosen meticulously. We each tried to question everyone. Now, we're not coming in here to try a case, just say, well, here's Dr. Kevorkian and Jeff Feiger, and here's Tim Kenny, and we're trying to put him in jail. Okay, let's go. We called witnesses. They didn't call anybody. All they said was, there were very nice police. They came here, they saw Dr. Kevorkian's van. Dr. Kevorkian came out. He had a TV tape. Dr. Kassem said exactly what every one of the other doctors have said who testified for Dr. Kevorkian. And he says, well, I've proved my case beyond a reasonable doubt. What? Is black, white, is day, night? Is this some trick? Did we lose our common sense when we walked in here? You mean to say that it wasn't guilty? That Dr. Kevorkian, remember we talked about that innocent until proven guilty? That wasn't the way it was. It was just he's guilty and he's got to prove himself innocent beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't believe it. And then when the judge therefore instructs you on what the law is, the judge will say, I believe, that the prosecutor must prove beyond a reasonable doubt each and every one of the following elements. Beyond a reasonable doubt. First element, that Dr. Kevorkian knew that Thomas Hyde intended or would attempt to commit suicide. Wrong. Wrong. You think Thomas Hyde was suicidal? If you go to a doctor and you have a fatal disease, and he says, you know what? And there is a test like this. It's called an analogous bone marrow transplant. They're fatal in about 90% of the cases. You got a 1 out of 10 chance of surviving. You want to try it? Absolutely. You're going to die anyways. Are you suicidal? No. If a doctor, like Dr. Kevorkian pointed out to you, cuts off your leg to keep the cancer from spreading, do you intend to cut off a leg? You see, Thomas Hyde knew he was dying. Dying wasn't the issue. He wasn't trying to commit suicide. He was suffering. And unless Heidi Fernandez is a liar, unless Sean Hyde is a liar, and unless everyone who's testified is a liar, he had no intent to commit suicide. He was suffering, and his intent was to relieve pain. Death was not what he sought. The end of suffering was what he sought. Now, he must prove to you that Dr. Kevorkian knew that Thomas Hyde was suicidal. It never happened, beyond a reasonable doubt. Where is the evidence to that? There is none because it didn't happen. 2, that Dr. Kevorkian, after knowing that Thomas Hyde was suicidal, which he never was, and by the way, I like this. 1, he says, first time he says, actions speak louder than words. That's right. Every single one of Dr. Kevorkian's actions ever, every single one of Thomas Hyde's actions ever, every single one of Heidi Fernandez's actions ever show us the truth of what I'm saying now. That Tom wasn't suicidal, and he wanted to relieve his pain and suffering, and Dr. Kevorkian believes that he has the right, and Dr. Kevorkian wanted to help him relieve his pain and suffering. And then, after knowing that Dr. Kevorkian knew he was suicidal, which he wasn't, then he has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he provided the physical means by which Thomas Hyde committed suicide. That never happened because Thomas Hyde didn't commit suicide. Thomas Hyde ended his suffering. But he says, well, you know what? Actions speak louder than words. But then he says, well, then I changed my mind. Words speak louder than actions. Read this. This means that he tried to commit suicide, even though all the actions say he didn't. He'll say anything. He'll come in without witnesses. He'll come in here and say anything to you. We might as well not have had a case. We should have stood up here with Mr. Kenny because he didn't have one witness who testified to anything. No police had ever met Thomas Hyde alive. No police, and they were all very nice, had ever met Heidi Fernandez alive. No medical examiner. Those are the only witnesses. I think there were 4 police. They were very nice. And Dr. Kassem, that's his entire case, had ever met them alive. How did he prove the elements of the crime unless he wants you to make them up? You understand, some people can come in here and say, look don't look here, look there.
Mandy had a buzzed baby.
What was it?
Mandy had a buzzed baby.
I saw that. 9 months, baby. Yeah, basically a pregnancy. You're right. That's true. Yeah, popped out a buzz baby. Been killing it out here also, Mandy. Thank you so much. Well, I've got it paused here real quick. Let me shout out Dinah, who just gifted out a bunch of memberships. This one was cool because Wild Child jumped in the chat and basically said, oh shit, I'm gray, and actually got gifted a membership out the gate. Like, it didn't have to wait no time at all. Holy shit. Love it, love it, love it. Hell yeah.
Just chilling.
Just chilling.
Hold up. Hold up. Hold
And then
up.
also, she gifted out another one. And on that one, Sarah got gifted a membership, aspiring court reporter. So welcome here also, guys. And then everybody's giving out or showing the anniversaries for how long they've been members, and some of them are blowing me away because we're coming up on a year for some folks, dude. That's blowing me away because this last year has went by like that, like so quickly. It's been weird. But it's so cool to see. I love it. Thank y'all so much, man. Craziness. Anniversaries. That's what we're here for, baby. I'm going to give you one.
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
And it'll get some people to look there. How do you do that? That's just not possible. That's just not possible. That's what happened here. That's why and of course no one could cooperate with Mr. Kenny because nobody who ever knew Thomas Hyde alive thinks that anything Mr. Kenny has been doing is anything less than criminal. And therefore everybody who ever knew Thomas Hyde alive said, we will do anything we need to or can do, Dr. Kevorkian, for you to come before a jury and tell the real story. We're not going to let somebody in cooperation with the Oakland County and Wayne County prosecutor come in here and say lies. We're going to say the truth. That isn't to say that any police or Dr. Kassem told lies. They didn't. They didn't testify to anything. So the first one, he can't prove because he never did, and it wasn't true. Secondly, that Dr. Kevorkian intentionally did one of the following: provided the physical means by which Thomas Hyde committed suicide. Thomas Hyde didn't commit suicide. 2, participated in a physical act by which Thomas Hyde committed suicide. He didn't. He ended his suffering. If you, while you're unconscious, can write down on a piece of paper when I'm unconscious, pull the tube out of me and end my life, that's okay? But Mr. Kenny says you can't look the doctor in the eye and say I'm choking to death on my own spit. Help me end that suffering, and that's a crime? 3, he must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the means provided or the physical act utilized were intended to cause death and not to relieve pain and discomfort, not to cause death, even if the procedure may hasten or increase the risk of death. Therefore, he has to show you in Dr. Kevorkian's heart that his intent was to kill Thomas Hyde and not to relieve his suffering. What did he say that? I guess he did that by calling him Dr. Death in this closing statement. He did that. That's how he proved it. I'll call him Dr. Death, and I hope somebody up there will go and get him for me. And finally, and most ridiculously...
Looking at him like he loves them.
No, that was a hate stare, bro.
Oh, okay. I was looking at it like, damn, I could marry you right fucking now.
He's like, I want to fucking kill you, dude. That's what
I want to hate fuck you. That's what I saw.
Yeah, these two guys don't like each other.
No, they don't. No, they
I've
don't.
had relationships with prosecutors much like this.
Is there still like a respect thing, like there, like no, I mean, not even a mutual respect.
Nah, I mean it depends. It's like, and this is an interesting trial because it's really, it's not. I mean, technically, it always has to be about a statute, that he has to prove each and every element of that statute that he keeps putting up. But this is really a different type of criminal trial. You know what I mean? This is really kind of a fundamental right type of trial where it's different, where, because it's like getting the jury to kind of lock into that, that particular statute where, that he was relieving pain as opposed to, because obviously the result is going to be that he's going to die, so they've got to lock into that first portion of the statute where they're relieving pain, even though it may hasten death. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a technical argument, but really at the heart of it, it's exactly what Feiger's arguing, like, are we going to allow the state to dictate what the fuck we do with our bodies, with our lives? It's a great trial.
It is, dude. It's been so interesting. I love the argument. Like, I love watching this. Like, this has been my favorite one, I think. Like,
it's great, man.
Like, Dahmer was awesome, and it was interesting for different reasons, but this one's like, it's asking a completely different question.
Yeah, this is different. Like, Dahmer was a fucking monster.
Yeah, that one you're going into, and you already kind of know what you're getting. I mean, this one, and like I've said over here many times, like, I went into this one not kind of knowing what I was going to get, but like not knowing I was getting this. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was going to be completely different. So
yeah,
it's been awesome.
I was trying to tell you, man.
I love this dude. Like, now I love this dude. Like, I'll always, if I ever, which you don't know, I'm not going to probably be in a situation where someone's just talking shit about Dr. Kevorkian, but if they are, I'm ready to go, baby. I know the facts.
Give him the business, Steve-O.
Listen, actually, sir.
I I mean, they did no investigation, none. They just said, let's get him and jail him. They must convince you.
Hey, I am going to run upstairs, take a piss. That coffee went right through me. I'll be right back.
Beyond a reasonable doubt that the crime occurred someplace it didn't occur, in Wayne County. Okay? First of all, it was never a crime. Second of all, Dr. Kevorkian never lies. Margot Janis doesn't lie. Neil Nickel doesn't lie. And I don't lie. But I don't tell him and make it easy for him to jail my client. Thomas Hyde died in Royal Oak on August the 4th at approximately 7:25 at Dr. Kevorkian's apartment. Now, I would like to know how Mr. Kenny proves beyond a reasonable doubt something that never happened. That's just abomination. But you see, you are the people who decide. That's how you could have injustices. As easy as that, you could have somebody stand up and get you to decide something that never happened. Because you're the ultimate deciders of the fact, even though it never happened. And even though Dr. Kevorkian and everyone have told you what happens, you could decide against all truth. And he hopes that. I don't think you would. I don't think that you could go back into the jury room and make a decision not simply against the facts, but your own conscience and against your sworn duties, simply because Mr. Kenny asks you to, and I don't think that'll happen. The way you prove cases in court is you prove them by the introduction of evidence. Mr. Kenny had no evidence, but I thought it was important that we not simply, I have nothing to prove, other than hopefully have you, as the conscience of the community of the state of Michigan, and indeed of the United States and all of the peoples in the United States who believe that it is right and proper that an adult, mentally competent individual, such as Thomas Hyde, who is sick and dying, has the right to decide for himself and in conjunction with his or her maker, in accordance with his beliefs and his or her beliefs alone, how much suffering they have to undergo. And therefore I believe that it is appropriate to present it to you and have you, not me, not Dr. Kevorkian, and not the judges and the legislatures and the attorney generals and the Oakland County prosecutors and the sheriffs out there. Have you. You stand up now and talk. You stand up and you tell them. You tell all of them. You tell the whole world whether we as people own our own bodies, whether we as people in the continuous struggle for human rights have the right to control our destinies. You understand? Because it's only when we as the people agree that somebody else can take our rights away that we lose them. That's how this country was started, and that's how we've protected freedom for over 200 years, by fighting for it. We fight for freedom. It isn't given to us. It is our birthright, but it's something that constantly has to be protected. Constantly has to be protected. We have to constantly be vigilant for freedom. Constantly, because if we don't, there will be somebody someplace inevitably that will say, you can't do this, you can't control your own bodies. You will suffer under death. Women don't control their own bodies. Depending on what race or creed, you can't use the buses. If depending on the religion you are, you're exterminated. If you aren't vigilant, it'll get taken away. And an attempt is being made now, and we have to stand up for it. And that's why I introduce all of the evidence. Because it's not good enough for me to sit over here on an issue as important as this and simply say, this is silly. This is silly. We have a prosecutor here with no victim. Nobody will cooperate, no bit of proof. only people employed, the only witnesses for the prosecution, we could have rested right there, would have been people employed by the city of Detroit who were very nice but didn't know anything. It wasn't enough for that, because then it wouldn't have allowed you to go back and make a statement like needs to be made. And that's why it was important for me not to prove his innocence, because I don't have to. And he doesn't need it anyways, because if you're innocent, other than the attempts to take that freedom away, truth will show. You can put a lie on the highest pinnacle and it'll drip down. You can bury it the deepest hole and it'll seep up. The truth will come to light. But it was important that we hear from everybody. It's important that you heard from medical doctors, important medical doctors, who each and every one said the effect and therefore the intent of this procedure and what Dr. Kevorkian did in these entire situation was to relieve Tom's suffering. It was important that you heard from Sean Hyde. It was important that you heard from Heidi Fernandez. It was important that you heard from Mr. Thurman. It was important that you heard from Dr. Kevorkian and Neil Nickel and Margot Janis. It was important. Every single person who was involved in this, so that you could take a look and you could say, is this what I see on the newspapers, this Dr. Death, this guy who just is a law unto himself, which was always the big lie? I think Mr. Kenny's been watching too much news, in spite of the judge's admonition not to. I think he's been watching too much TV, because that ain't the facts. This ain't the same guy. This is a man who's been preparing all his life. This is the man who, not insensitively, you come to him and says, sure, I'll knock you out of this world. If you want to commit suicide, you wouldn't go to Dr. Kevorkian. You'd go to your local gun store and blow your head off the American way. 100 Americans a week do it. Do you think anybody who sells Smith & Wesson will ever be up here on an assisted suicide charge? Do you think anybody, if you walk into your local Kmart and buy a rope and say, gee, I want to hang myself, do you think anyone will ever be up here on an assisted suicide charge? Do you think that a doorman who lets you up to the top of the building, so when you say you want to jump off, is going to be up here on assisted suicide charge? No. Because we celebrate that. That's okay to Mr. Kenny. But we wouldn't want responsible people like Dr. Kevorkian, who has set out a procedure to make sure that there's no abuse, to make sure that Thomas Hyde decided for himself, that no one coerced Thomas Hyde, who assiduously, that means carefully, documented each and every procedure, who involved the entire family to make sure that the entire family not only knew that Tom wished to end his suffering, but that it was medically appropriate, to make sure that Tom had exhausted every possible medical procedure and that this was some kind of just mere psychological manifestation of Tom, that he really truly was suffering and that there was absolutely no way. And then, even then, wait, Tom, wait another month. Get everything you can out of life, and when the suffering becomes absolutely unbearable. Did you know that? Because if you read it in the paper, you'd think there was some other guy out there, this Dr. Death. I don't think you thought that.
Tiger's awesome.
I think
all right,
he
I'm
is.
making coffee. I'm making coffee.
But I think if you heard what's going on here, and I could have lined them up from now until doomsday, the medical doctors and the people who would come and say what every other single witness in this case said. Every other single witness in this case said. This was Tom's choice. Nobody coerced him. Nobody forced him. He could have decided at any time he could live with the suffering. But in his mind, this wasn't a suicide. This is ending his suffering. And he, as a free, mentally competent adult, had a right to decide. And that's why I put in the letters from Tom telling about his contacts with Dr. Kevorkian. That's why I put in the letters from Tom to Heidi in Florida to describe how he needed more Valium so he could even sleep. That's why I put in the letter to a nurse when no one in Henry Ford Hospital in May, 4 months before he died, would even talk to him because they thought he was retarded. When he just couldn't talk anymore, he had to write a letter to a nurse to say, please wash me. That's why I put in the document where he said, I feel like the main character in the book Johnny Godley's Gun must read. You see, I know we're deciding Dr. Kevorkian's fate now, and I know that there's a larger decision here. You're deciding the fate, indeed, of all who someday might be in the position of Thomas Hyde. But do you know this prosecution has not only made us not allow Tom Hyde to die and lie in peace, but has forced his entire family through this. Who did this? Who did this? And why? Why? To protect Tom Hyde from himself? To protect all of us from Dr. Kevorkian or anyone like him? To protect all of us from freedom of choice? And that's why I showed you who Tom was. This isn't some person who had let people take over his life, but this is a person, and I showed you the pictures of a strong guy who worked outdoors, who was his own person, who said, rather than a person who let somebody else control his life so that maybe you might think this wasn't his decision, this is exactly the opposite. This is a person who wanted to control his life, who had a right to control his life. And that, I showed you the picture, is what the disease did to him. And then there's 2 additional pictures which you didn't see, but I want to show them to all of you. One is Tom with his little baby Carmen before he got sick. And one is Tom a month later. Look what the disease did to him. Now you see, what's so important here is not so much, because I think you know, what the disease did to him. But what you always heard was he couldn't even hold his baby anymore. He couldn't even hold Carmen anymore. He was a monster to her. Is that a criminal? Did this man who lived, who breathed, who walked, who lived, who loved, who produced this child, this American man in 1993, was he a criminal? Is this child's father a criminal? By your decision, are you going to make his final act of freedom, a crime? Is Carmen's father a criminal? And finally, and most poignantly, we have the tape. Because a picture sometimes does say 1,000 words. But Tom Hyde himself talked to you. And he talks to each and every one of you now from the grave. And what he says to me every day of my life, and I know what he says to Dr. Kevorkian every day of whatever life he has left. Don't let me down. Don't let my life and my death be in vain. Don't back down. Don't stand down. Stand up and say it. And say it again. And say it again. And say it again. I think it's appropriate, just before I close, that we listen to a portion of what Tom Hyde says to me and says to you, now, a year since he's died.
VHS, Steve-O. VHS.
Yeah.
Old school, baby.
Got the VCR out here, the old the cart
Man.
with the television.
That might be a beta. Maybe he's going beta.
Does Tom want to go into a hospice?
He doesn't want to go to a hospital.
Tom, do you want to go into a hospice? Why not? What's your main reason?
You want to maintain
Dignity. Wants to maintain his dignity. And he feels that being dependent in a hospice is not dignified. Is that correct, Tom?
which is totally dependent on. I mean, I need to lift him. I need to.
We're gonna have to show him walking a little bit in a while. Does he have control? Do you have control of your bowel and bladder?
It's getting worse because he has missed
The records say that he's experiencing some urgency with both urinary tract and
when he needs to go,
still
he needs to go.
Okay. It's becoming reflex almost.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when there's been some, and that also that has been progressive. You can see that progressing too, where you just can't get there soon enough or something.
All right, now, Tom, do you have any pain anywhere?
Muscle cramps. Intense muscle cramps.
Where? All over?
He gets them a lot when he yawns.
I see.
Too. But he gets them everywhere.
Biceps. Triceps. Forearms. Hands. Throat. Tongue. Can you stick your tongue out? As far as you can.
Can you see his fasciculating?
Yeah, see the fasciculating. Can you focus in on that? Focus close in on his tongue. Stick it out. Show it fasciculating. That's quivering.
Yes.
Quivering. Okay, Tom.
If we removed his shirt, you could also see that too.
Yeah, now, can you move your arms at all, Tom? I'm sorry to put you to all this strenuous effort. As far as you can. Okay. Don't go too far. Don't strain yourself. Can you stretch your fingers out? Okay. Can you make a fist now? Okay. The right arm is definitely weaker, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that was
Can you move your arms like this at all?
Chicken.
Yeah. The deltoids. Okay, don't strain too much, Tom. Don't strain.
Conserve your energy.
Yes,
so you know you get a
now he's
cramp,
getting cramps, right? Okay, we're not going to go any further with the physical thing now. I just want to see you walk a little bit, try to walk a little bit for the record, that's all. Well, Tom, what is it you wish? Tell me your wish in plain English. Take your time. Take your time. Don, I understand he first said, I want to end this. Right, okay. I'm going to have Heidi read something to you. I want you to understand it. And this is your request. And first of all, has anyone that you know of, Heidi, anybody in this room, any relative of yours, ever tried to talk you into doing this? Is it your choice entirely? Absolutely?
His idea.
Yours alone?
Yes, he asked me when he was in Florida, when he was there visiting, and he wanted me to get your address.
Okay.
I obtained that, and I sent it to him, and he wrote you and signed the letter himself. I knew that was totally on his own.
And he doesn't want hospice?
He does not want to prolong what he just. Tom and I communicate a lot better on mindset. We read each other with our eyes.
I understand.
And Tom is suffering so.
I understand.
And he wants to be free and to be free of this body. This is only a body.
Right.
His soul will be free.
Right.
And he needs to free his soul.
He's a free spirit trapped in this body.
Yeah.
It's it's going to be your choice, Tom. Understand that. No one's ever going to try to block you or talk you out of anything you don't want to. Don't worry about that. Okay?
His
I
crying,
want you to relax.
his crying and laughing are uncontrollable.
That's good.
That's part of the disease.
I want him to relax as much as possible. I don't want him to have any fear.
What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do?
You want to write something, Tom? Yeah. Okay. I'll get the piece of paper.
Thank you. What are you going to do?
I feel like, you like the pen? Why don't we leave it?
Well, no, sometimes I make him write for me.
You like that pen?
I can.
Okay, it's yours.
It's
He writes, he can write this way, so it is very legible. It's a good way to communicate.
Do you want a thing?
Yeah. Here. Okay.
I feel like the main.
Feel like the main character. Ian, is it more coming?
Don't put words in his mouth, I'll tell you. I've got my head snapped off for that before.
I know.
Right, honey?
I'm going to stop right here and see what he writes.
In the book.
I feel like the main character in the book.
Oh.
Wait a minute. Carl told me about that. We'll discuss it later.
Finish writing it, though. I would like you to have this.
I know what he's writing. Carl told me about the whole thing. I never read the book. I never saw it. It's an interesting thing. Carl. Huh? Carl, friend of mine. Oh, yeah.
He's been stating this since he described this feeling to some friends of ours that we hadn't received occasionally, and we talked about it, and all four of us cried about it one night because of the story is so heart-wrenching.
Nobody but Tom would really know how that character felt.
That's right.
We can't know.
No, and I had never read the book, but I cried when he was telling my friend. He was telling on the typewriter because he can't speak for must read.
Yeah. I know about the book. A friend told me in detail about the book. He told me in detail. We'll discuss it later. He felt, I feel like the main character in the book, Johnny Got His Gun. Must read. Focus in on this one.
Focus in on it. Make it
That's
legible.
pretty good printing, by the way. It isn't bad.
I'll tell you, the pen is good.
George, we got other ones around. You got it? Okay. Now, Heidi, you have to read this to him.
Okay.
And let me write his name here. Thomas. What was the initial name? W. Hyde.
Junior.
Let's put the whole name.
Junior.
Okay. Now, you have to read this to him. We blotted this out because we can't obtain the drugs right now. This is about the drugs. And this is what you've got to read. This is the request that, let's see if this is what Tom wants. Okay, you read it to him slowly so he understands everything.
He understands everything.
Okay.
Fast or slow, but I'll read it slow. I, Thomas W. Hyde, Jr., the undersigned, hereby request, of my own free will and without any reservations or extrinsic persuasion or duress, that my life of intolerable and interminable pain and or suffering be ended in the most humane, rapid, and painless manner with the help of a competent medical professional. It is my understanding that I will end my life by breathing through a routine facial mask or plastic tent, a lethal mixture of carbon monoxide and nitrogen gas. All details of procedures have been explained to me by the undersigned medical professional, and I am fully aware of the implications and the consequences of my voluntary carrying them out. You understand?
You understand that, Tom? We're going to go over more of the details off camera. We're going to go over the details.
He understands that.
Okay. If he has to, he can sign one more thing here. I hate to put him through all his signature.
It feels like...
It's your pen, so be careful. It's your pen.
Yeah, don't wear it out.
Right here, Tom.
They sell more.
Yeah. Not this on this one, right? And then your witness and ID, okay?
Yes. This is like in the rock star who likes autograph.
Well, he writes so well now. He must have had good penmanship earlier.
Yeah, he did. Honestly, for a man, and I have excellent penmanship. My printing is artistic to the point of almost like a typewriter. And Tom has always mentioned, said that, but his printing is
even this isn't bad in his debilitating state. He writes fairly well. Okay, and then I'll fill in the rest. I'll fill in the site. Okay. One other question I've got to ask. Tom, what is your religion? Take your time. Agnostic. In other words, you don't adhere to any organized religious doctrine or sect? None. And do you want any kind of a religious counseling at all?
No.
None at all? No. Okay. None whatsoever? Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add to this, or have Heidi tell us? Or Heidi, is there anything you want to add before we conclude this discussion?
I want Tom to be free. I I should suffer too long. I'm sorry, honey. That's all I want to say.
Yeah.
It's just too much work. Every day it gets worse.
Okay. We're here to help. Don't worry, Tom. You're not alone. You're not alone.
No.
You're not alone.
We love you, baby.
Neil, is there anything you wish to add?
You want to cover your fee on the camera?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Sam, there is no fee. You know that. There's no charge for this. So don't worry about money.
And also, we'd like to emphasize that at any time, up until the time that you pull that clip off the hose, you have the right to stop. Our feelings won't be hurt. We'll walk away. We'll be happy if you don't do it, and if you do it. You have that right. You have that control.
That's right.
And don't worry about us. If you decide that you want to do this, stop it at any time. That's right. Walk away from it and you get the tap.
We're absolutely neutral. We can't hurt our feelings either way. If you want to stop, 1 minute before you reach for the thing, stop. It doesn't hurt any. We can come back another day. Anything you want. You got to understand, Tom, you are in control. Okay?
This is the only thing that he has control over.
That's right. Well, he's got absolute control on this. Nobody is going to deny or contradict or argue. Nobody. Okay? Not even a so-called law.
He wants control, and this is the only control that he will have. To control his destiny, you know.
Let me fix that static real quick. Amber, thanks for pointing that out.
I want you to relax as much as possible. The time's left. Try to enjoy yourself because you're not going to, you're going to get what you want. But relax and enjoy yourself. And we'll go over a lot of details off camera, okay?
Okay.
All right. As it is now, what time is it?
8:50.
All right. This first session then is completed at 8:50 p.m. on July 1st, 1993.
Woo!
I don't want to I hope I have not let Tom down. I hope that I have not let Dr. Kevorkian down. I do not believe that any reasonable person could say that Dr. Kevorkian's intent in administering the procedure was not to relieve pain and discomfort, although it hastened death. It's now time to turn it over to you. If anything that I've said or done during these proceedings have in any way insulted you or made you feel bad about me, I hope you won't take it up against Dr. Kevorkian or Thomas Hyde or his family. You are going to be the sole triers of the fact. The prosecutor is required to prove each and every element of the crime alleged beyond a reasonable doubt. A crime that is not a crime, never will be a crime, and could never have been a crime. I'm now going to turn over to you, and I've been shouldering it, and I think it's time to turn over to you, the conscience of this state, for the days and for the hours and for the months and even the years of Thomas Hyde's suffering, of this trial, of the responsibility that I've had, I don't think only for Dr. Kevorkian, but for Thomas Hyde and for Janet Atkins and Sherry Miller and Marge Wantz and Stan Ball and Jack Miller and all the other people who at some time, someplace, somewhere might say, like Thomas Hyde, the suffering is unbearable. I turn that now over to you. I'm sorry for the length of my closing statement. It's a mere speck in time for what you and the importance of the decisions that you make here, not just for Thomas Hyde and Dr. Kevorkian and Tom's family, but for all of us.
for all those decisions. I turn those decisions now over to you. And I hope you'll bear those with the same fairness, with the same compassion, and with the same sense of justice that I think is inherent in this system of justice, which I celebrate as a participant and as a lawyer. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Please,
If
anybody else do anything like that, you're going to leave. This is not a stage where you come to see a drama. You're going to leave the courtroom. I would not have that kind of a conduct here. Please make your rebuttal remarks. Hold on a minute, please. May I get some other deputies from next door, please, in the courtroom?
All right, sir.
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right. It's going to go into the rebuttal here.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is
from the prosecution, but holy shit, Bob, that was heavy.
That was rough, dude.
That was the second time they've shown that. And yeah, dude, that's crazy. Like, I couldn't imagine being at that table and having to live through something like that, honestly. Hopefully, no one does, but
well, that was as real as you get.
Yeah, dude. Like, showing that to the jury, like, that says, like, what we felt, they felt. Like, they were feeling every bit of that, so.
Every bit of it, man.
Like, it's crazy.
Crazy.
All right, we're going to roll into what, let's see what old Kenny has to say here after that.
It's my opportunity to speak to you in rebuttal. I will not take much of your time, but there are some points and some comments made by Mr. Feiger that I feel cannot go unanswered. First and foremost, I think you need to keep in mind, as they say in baseball, keep your eye on the ball. Mr. Feiger must have mentioned about a dozen times about our making Thomas Hyde a criminal, and that Thomas Hyde is being made criminal in this particular case. And that is not the case at all. It is an attempt to get you focusing your attention on Thomas Hyde and Thomas Hyde alone, as opposed to focusing on the statute which talks about what does Jack Kevorkian do. What is his action? What is his intent with regards to the suicide of Thomas Hyde? And I think that that's critically important, because nothing could be further from the truth in terms of how this case has been handled in terms of trying to make Thomas Hyde a criminal out of all of this. You know, Mr. Feiger talked to you about your being the conscience of the community. He talked to you about the importance of focusing on this particular law, and you certainly need to do that. And I hope you listen very carefully to the judge's instruction, because the assisted suicide law, ladies and gentlemen, is a general and a broad law. You should not be led to believe that this assisted suicide law only applies to people who are acting as doctors or people who are acting in a medical capacity to relieve suffering, because the assisted suicide statute would apply in any number of other instances. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, what we would have in a circumstance where, let's say, a single 18-year-old young woman is pregnant, out of school, out of work, dependent on support from a husband, and the husband dies suddenly or leaves. That young pregnant woman could be in the midst of despair, could be deeply depressed about her circumstance. If she were deeply depressed about her circumstance and went to a girlfriend and said, "Life isn't worth living for me anymore," I want you to help me kill myself. Is that something that we would look the other way about? Is that something we think we should look the other way about? Because it's just as much a violation as what Jack Kevorkian does. And do we want to have, or can we afford to have, a community where we say on a one-by-one basis, well, yeah, you violated the statute, but we think you're okay. We think you're an okay person, so you're all right, but over here, no, we can't have that. What about someone who is a psychologist or a counselor or a psychiatrist? Can you imagine someone who is having deep personal difficulties in their life and going in to seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they enroll in a therapy treatment program for months or maybe even a couple of years, and nothing quite seems to be working at the time, and the patient comes in and says to the psychiatrist in despair, "Doctor, nothing seems to be working. I just can't bear this mental pain anymore. I can't go on." Would we accept as being valuable? Would we accept it as being perfectly acceptable behavior for the psychiatrist to say, well, I can help you kill yourself? Of course not. When Mr. Feiger talked about the law and about this country and some of the principles that are important, certainly the principle of freedom is critically important. But it's also critically important, ladies and gentlemen, to remember that one of the things that makes this country different from the kind of totalitarian or dictatorship government that Mr. Feiger was mentioning is that in this country, we try and we're working hard toward the notion of saying the law applies to everybody. This assisted suicide law doesn't just apply to Jack Kevorkian. It applies to the governor of the state of Michigan. It applies to the legislators who introduced the bill. It applies to everybody in this state. It's somewhat ironic, I think, at this particular time that yesterday we ended up having the funeral of President Nixon, former President Nixon. And here was a man who back in 1972, when he got elected president, became the most powerful man in the world. He was the most powerful person in the world, but he got involved in committing criminal acts in the Watergate incident. And even though he was very sincere in his involvement and why he wanted to do what he did, because he was trying to end the war in Vietnam and trying to remain in power and keep stability in terms of the presidency in this country. And even though he had won 49 of the 50 states and was the powerful leader, the most powerful leader in the free world, the laws in the United States got set in motion and indicated that even though you're the most powerful person, the law still applies to you. And that's what happened to Richard Nixon. It's because nobody, no matter who you are, you're not above the law. As you knew right from the beginning, when we had jury selection in this case, when you go in to deliberate, you're not going to go into that jury deliberation room to raise your hand and vote on whether or not you like the law or whether or not you think that, well, maybe it could be amended or changed a little bit. That's not what this is about. This law that we have also protects those who are powerless. Talked about the person who may be in despair. We may be talking about those who are getting psychological treatment, who are in despair and turn to a professional. We don't want a professional. We don't want a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist to suggest to someone that suicide is an option for depression. We don't want someone who may happen to be a homeless person on the street who's ill and taken to a hospital and given medical care and treatment to be told by a doctor, well, listen, you're going to go right back out on the street. You've got a tough medical situation. Is this what you really want to do? The opportunities for abuse, ladies and gentlemen, are enormous. Mr. Feiger talked about the fact that we provide humane treatment for our animals, that we put dogs to sleep, we put cats to sleep, our own pets, rather than see them suffer. And that's certainly true. And probably many of you have experienced that particular phenomenon. But I also want you to think and recognize that we do that because as much as we love our pets, we do value animal life differently than human life. We view human life very, very.
This guy would be the boss that doesn't let you take a day when your dog dies. He's like, "What the fuck? Get in here to work." That's not.
I hate this fucking guy,
dude.
I hate this fucking guy. This is what prosecutors feel like to me, in general. I've been fighting with these fucking people for 20 years. Trying to get them to understand that mental illness is a real thing, that drug addiction is a real thing. Because everybody sits around and thinks that everything's murder. That's not what our criminal justice system is about. It's a much bigger fucking thing. This case, the reason I wanted you to really run through this case, man, because Feiger is a perfect example of what I'm always preaching about, what fucking defense attorneys mean to our society. It's like you have some fucking pimp like this guy. So I was looking through the chat and I wanted to hear what this guy was saying, but no, his analogies suck.
They're terrible, dude.
He's comparing, depression.
The therapist one is trash. Jeez.
It's just garbage. It's just absolute garbage. And I saw that, I think, because defense attorney Meow had asked a question whether or not they were hoping for jury nullification. Jury nullification is basically where the jury doesn't apply the law, that they, fundamentally that they go back, because the attorneys cannot argue, we're asking you not to apply the law because the law is wrong. That's what jury nullification, you can't ask them to do it. But if they go back and they say, okay, this law isn't just, I cannot find this person guilty, even though they violated the law, that's jury nullification. I think here that the statute can be read a couple of different ways, because that statute that Feiger kept holding up on that cue card, where it was talking about, essentially if this is being done to, stop the pain, even though it will hasten death, I think that portion of the statute's a different thing. Then because I don't know if this guy will read it again, the statute. So I think that they can still apply the law, even though the statute has in there ultimately about that it causes death, because there's the hastening the death, but that the intent, that Kevorkian's intent wasn't to kill him, it was to stop his pain. It's
such a fine line, dude.
It's a very fine line argument, but I think it has the wiggle room. That it's not straight up jury nullification, but it's now we have this, it's only a matter of time before them overturning Roe versus Wade, has this exact trial coming in, except it's a woman who has found out that she's going to die if she goes through the entire birth, and has gone in order to try to save her own life, and she gets charged criminally, you know, and it's going to be this argument. Like it's like these are fundamental cases in this country about how we're choosing how to live, you know, and it's like where religion's always going to infiltrate it, and religion doesn't have a fucking thing to do with it.
Dude, 100%, man.
Unless somebody can prove to me that anybody's religion, whatever they, and again,
impossible.
I people with faith, believe what you want to believe, but that's your shit.
Yeah, yeah.
That's your shit. Don't put it on us. Like you know,
dude.
I mean, people can believe whatever they want to believe. I don't try to impress my values and my beliefs on anybody else. Keep your shit to yourself. And if you want to have faith in something that we are never going to know the answer to, that's on you, and good on you. But don't force it on us as citizens of this country that that's what our values need to be because of that you believe in. So you know what I mean? And it's
100%,
like,
dude.
That thing is going to. It's only a matter of time. Like it'll be a year or two before we see the first people charged with that shit, and it's going to be this trial all over again about what we can do as human beings that live in this country with our own bodies. Are we going to allow the government to tell us what we can and can't do with our own bodies? And I have a very, very hardline stance on that. And the answer is fuck no.
Yeah, dude.
Goddamn thing to do with our bodies. So
100%, dude. Yeah.
Preach,
brother. Because that's
yeah.
That was amazing.
Sacred. And if you need an illustration of that, ladies and gentlemen, just think for a moment in your mind. If you were driving home and you got into your driveway and got out of your car and noticed that your next door neighbor's house was on fire, and you knew that inside your neighbor's house were 2 children and 3 dogs, is there any question in your mind in terms of running into that house who you would go to save first? Of course you would go and you would save the children. It's because we value human life so highly that we hold this high standard. In this particular case, look at what Dr. Kevorkian has articulated. Listen to what he has said in terms of his evaluations, how he handles things. He told you that every case is different, which means that there's really no yardstick to measure one case against another. It all boils down to Dr. Kevorkian's own final judgment, which he says is it. He's the one who makes the final decision. Keep in mind, it's not the patient. Thomas Hyde requested Dr. Kevorkian's assistance. But Dr. Kevorkian was the one who ultimately would make the decision about whether or not Thomas Hyde would get his help or not get his help. So the determination, the final determination of whether or not assisted suicide is going to take place doesn't rest with Thomas Hyde. It rests with Dr. Kevorkian. Dr. Kevorkian, interestingly enough, has come into this criminal trial proceeding and has tried to treat it sort of like a cafeteria type arrangement. He agrees with certain principles of laws and gets the benefit of certain criminal laws, but then there are others he chooses to reject. Certainly, he gets and is entitled to all of the legal protections that every defendant gets in this state. He is presumed to be innocent. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. We must go forward with our case. There's no question about that. And those are rights that he gets, as does everyone else. He relies on that and expects that I and everyone else will honor those laws. But then he has indicated from the witness stand, as far as he is concerned, if he views that the law violates his conscience, he will not obey it. And you heard him talk about Gandhi and about following in Gandhi's tradition. But ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't follow in Gandhi's tradition, because when Gandhi decided to challenge laws that he didn't agree with, he came forward and accepted the consequences. In this particular case, the defense says it's come to this, ladies and gentlemen. It's come to this, to come before a jury, and finally have this issue of freedom resolved. And have it resolved how? On the grounds that it happened in Oakland County? Mr. Feiger tells you that their witnesses, Dr. Kevorkian, Mr. Nickel, and that he are the truth tellers in this particular case. But he doesn't remind you of the fact that Dr. Kevorkian, when he took the stand, indicated that it was his intention on August the 5th to mislead people, that he was intending to use words to create false impressions. And Mr. Feiger says, well, the police, Sergeant Day from Homicide. In particular, I suppose, he was the officer in charge. Sergeant Day should have gone out and should have done some investigating to find out that the crime had occurred in the parking lot behind the building. And what kind of evidence would he have found, ladies and gentlemen? What would he be looking for? Piece of Thomas Hyde's clothing? A note left behind by Thomas Hyde or Jack Kevorkian indicating this is where I did it? Do you believe that they're telling you the truth about what happened, where it happened? Keep in mind what Dr. Kevorkian said about, well, when we got to Royal Oak, we ended up going several blocks away, and we got in an alley, and then sort of down behind an area there where we could move Mr. Hyde into the van, and then we went back to the apartment. You heard that from Dr. Kevorkian. What'd you hear from Mr. Nickel? What you heard from Mr. Nickel was the fact that they drove from Novi to the apartment, right behind the apartment, the parking lot, behind Jack Kevorkian's. No mention of any alley. No mention of any transfer several blocks away. And what about Dr. Kevorkian's testimony from the stand? Twice during cross-examination, he indicated, it was not my intention. I never intended to do it in Oakland County. Now, would you say, well, once, maybe that's a slip-up? But twice, ladies and gentlemen, in cross-examination, he indicated it was not his intention, and it was never his intention, to do it in Oakland County. Remember the first time he blurted that out? I had asked him about whether or not he had contacted Dr. Rentz, the physician in Farmington Hills, the one who had been treating him the most. No, I didn't. There were two reasons I didn't want to do that. It's kind of rude, you know. They disagree with me and they hang up the phone in my ear, and that's not very pleasant. But then there's also another reason, because someone like Dr. Rentz may decide to go ahead and and notify some authorities and intervene and stop. So I asked him, well, what authorities may they be, Dr. Kevorkian? What authorities are you referring to? And he mentioned a few, and I said, well, what about the prosecutor from Oakland County? No, I wasn't concerned about him because it wasn't my intention to do it in Oakland County. We're talking about the truth, and that these people are committed to the truth. Then why do you have on August the 4th, 1993, this big press conference where they say it happened on Belle Isle? What is the possible reason for saying that? One of two reasons, ladies and gentlemen. They're either coming forward to proclaim to the world, this is what Jack Kevorkian did, to say exactly what happened. Or number two, they're coming forward to intentionally lie. I submit to you that what was said on the 4th what was said on the 5th of August was, in fact, the truth. It did happen on Belle Isle. When you put together Dr. Cassin's testimony about the death occurring within anywhere between 1 and 5 hours of the body arriving at the medical examiner's office at 11:30, that's perfectly consistent. Also consistent with the testimony of Officer Banks and Inspector Arthurs. Ladies and gentlemen, you were asked, or Mr. Feiger told you about the example of a surgeon who's doing some surgery on someone's leg because they have a cancer and they have to amputate the leg. And the question is, would you ask the surgeon, is it your intention to cut off the leg? And he said, no. The intention is to ease suffering. Ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the surgeon and you ask him, Mrs. Johnson had her left leg amputated, doctor. Did you intend to cut off that leg? He's going to say, well, of course I did. But then if you ask him why, what is your motivation for doing that, he will say, yeah, I amputated the leg because I needed to remove the cancer in order to preserve her life. So when you look at intention, look at the behavior. And what is the behavior? There's no question. It is to assist in a suicide. It is incomprehensible, ladies and gentlemen, to believe that when Thomas Hyde left that morning and when he met with Dr. Kevorkian, and when he met with Dr. Kevorkian and the gas was supplied to him and the mask was put around his face, it is impossible to believe that there was any other intent or goal than for Thomas Hyde to die. Because only through death could his suffering stop. He knew that. Dr. Kevorkian knew that. And he intended to die. Dr. Kevorkian intended, by his actions, to cause the death of Thomas Hyde in order to stop his suffering. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear the jury instruction, you're going to hear that it's not enough for a defense just to have the defendant claim that he was intending to relieve pain and suffering.
The defendant doesn't have to claim anything, anywhere, anytime. The entire burden's on Mr. Kenny.
The burden is there. Well, anyway, what's your response, please? What's your response to the
I'm just
objection?
responding to his contention, Judge, regarding, I'm not shifting the burden.
All right, the jury will be reminded that the burden of proof is always on the prosecution. I think these are responses that are made to the defense argument. Please proceed.
It's not enough, ladies and gentlemen, merely to be motivated or want to have someone's pain or discomfort relieved. That's not enough. If you believe that Dr. Kevorkian wanted the pain and the discomfort to be relieved, but that in doing so, he was doing this procedure to relieve the pain and the discomfort and to cause the death of Thomas Hyde, then that is sufficient for our burden. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to keep in mind that in this particular case, what we have is a defendant, Dr. Kevorkian, who certainly acts out of sincerity, a person who acts out of passion for what he believes in, But ladies and gentlemen, passion and sincerity are not enough. Unfortunately, we have seen throughout our history, and there are groups even out there now, political groups and religious groups who by their behavior, while acting passionately and sincerely and believing that they're following their conscience, do acts, whether it's blocking access to abortion clinics or anything like that, where the law steps in and says, even directed toward the groups that Dr. Kevorkian believes are persecuting him or part of a conspiracy against him. And the law steps in and says to those extreme groups, even if your religious principles make you believe that you feel that what you are doing is right, and you are passionately interested in what you are doing, and firmly believe that you're following your conscience, and you close down and deny access to these clinics, that's a violation of the law. And even when those people come before the court, they're certainly told that while we recognize your passion, we recognize your sincerity, that's not enough. Because otherwise, then, ladies and gentlemen, it boils down to just saying, as long as I sincerely believe what I'm doing, no one should be able to stop me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, once again, you go into the jury deliberation room, remember your oath, consider the evidence and the instructions given to you by Judge Jackson, and I urge you to return a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Jury, I do plan to give you the instructions today, although I do want to generally stay on the same schedule in terms of the end of the day, but I think it serves a better purpose to get you those instructions today, and I will be recording them so that if at some time you will need them again. But we will take a short break now. Will everyone please hold a minute until let the jurors out, please? We just hold just a minute, okay? Go ahead, that you're on the floor there. But everyone will just hold for a minute. We're going to take just about maybe no more than about 10 minutes exactly, okay? Just to time enough to get a breather and come back in. And I am going to give you the instructions today, okay? All right, go with the deputies, please.
The instructions is like 30 minutes.
Okay. Let me say again what I was said earlier. I want to forewarn again and put everyone on notice that there will be no emotional display of the type that I witnessed in this courtroom earlier a few minutes ago. This is a court.
Do what?
Do they have the verdict?
Yeah, that's what's coming up here next. It's 4 minutes. Cool. So yeah, I'm gonna skip. You see, is that cool? You think skip the jury instructions here at the end? That's 30 minutes of him rambling. So.
Yeah, I think the only instruction we really want to hear is like when they read the statute. But I mean, we know it. The statute is the thing that Feiger kept holding up. That's the applicable statute. So that's ultimately what it's going to boil down to. Yeah, all that dude's analogies fucking sucked.
Oh my God, the worst. It's like he was in real time thinking of like a new one and just rolling with it.
Yeah, I mean, dude,
Jesus.
What the fuck? Like, not applicable at all.
Donna Do 420 going to come through here. $2 holler, as Bob would say.
Holler!
Yeah, Murch Church rocks every Sunday. Hell yeah. Thank you so much, seriously.
She's an always giver, man. Always giver.
She rules. Yeah. Gifted out memes, dropping loot. Thank you all so much. Today's been incredible. Really appreciate it. Yeah, this is going to be the end here. This is literally the end of this trial, man. We've made it through it. This has been awesome. And then I need to figure out what I'm going to do next. I want to find a good one. So,
what are you thinking?
I don't know, man. I have one at work that I have up. Someone had sent me the other day, and it's I forget the guy's name, but it's an antifreeze murder trial. I think it's recent too. Like it's in the last little bit. And then there's another. So I thought about this, and I'd have to, again, I need to get the name, but it was one that I was looking at before this one. So there was another suitcase murder trial. You know, we're coming up on Sarah Boone, right? I thought about maybe doing that. It's not the same situation at all, but, you know, same type of vibe. A man ended up dead in a suitcase. So it's from the early 2000s.
Right.
And then, yeah, that's all I've really got right now. Like, but I'm going to keep digging, though. I want to find something that's really, really intriguing, man, because I feel like coming off of this one, you got to have a good one.
Well, dude, I mean,
might hit the best right now.
Someday we got to do OJ. I mean,
oh, dude, that'd be crazy.
It'll be like a 6-month fucking trial.
I was about to say that takes so long.
Dude, it's worth it though.
That'd be cool though.
That fucking trial was insane, man. Like, and if people were too young to have watched that, like for me,
I don't know shit about it besides the the hot stuff, like the real important stuff.
Dude,
like, I don't know any of the deep details.
It'll blow your mind. And like the defense team in that was like fucking obviously Johnny Cochran, but F. Lee Bailey, fucking Barry Sheck. It was like unbelievable. It was an unbelievable. Mandy wants to watch Gotti.
That's no, Mandy did say Gotti, and that would be a cool one too. That one's actually on the ticket too. I forgot she had mentioned that, and I did look at that. That would be fun. I mean, that'd be a gangster one. We haven't really went down that road, so.
Gangsta.
Yeah, dude. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The verdict.
Let's go.
Let's go.
The lawyers will please agree and acknowledge that the jurors are present seated in the courtroom, please, as constituted presently.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Frank, okay, thank you, Mr. Kenny and Mr. Feiger. Even though the jury, I have received a note. By the way, I should say for the record also, earlier today the jury sent a note saying we would like a copy of the assisted suicide law. That was about 11:55. At site bar, I informed Mr. Kenny and Mr. Feiger what I've done with that. I was just to make a copy of that with appropriate parts redacted, and to send in the 12 copies of that to the jury. And at 12:22, the jury sent a note that they had reached a verdict. Before I have the verdict announced here, just to be sure, one way or the other, you all agree on a verdict here. Am I correct with that? Okay. The clerk will please take the verdict, please.
Madam Spokesperson, would you please stand?
Yes, you said, pardon me? No, how did you said Madam Foreperson?
I meant to say foreperson.
Okay, all right, just go ahead and say foreperson. Okay, go ahead.
Please stand. What is your verdict as to the defendant, Dr. Jack Kevorkian, guilty or not guilty of suicide assisting?
We, the jury, find the defendant, Jack Kevorkian, not guilty of assisted suicide.
Okay, don't, please. Okay. Will you get that from that form, please? Okay. Now, I'm going to have the clerk do what we call polling the jury, okay? Essentially what that means that you will be asked individually regarding the verdict announced by your foreperson. So please listen to the question posed by the clerk and respond accordingly, okay?
Yes. Jury has
Okay. Any other questions or concerns, Mr. Kenny?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Feiger? Okay. Please wait. Please wait. Okay. I just asked you to wait until I officially do this. In case number 9301015, the people of the state of Michigan versus Jack Kevorkian, the jury having deliberated and has now announced their verdict of not guilty to the charge of assisted suicide, the court would have the appropriate judgment in as a matter of record. And as to this particular case, the defendant is relieved of any further obligations to this. Okay? Thank you. Now, the members of the jury, it's up to you whether or not you want to discuss this case in any way with anyone. Persons from the media have asked that if you would remain here in the jury room, in your jury box, there are some questions would like to be asked. Also, during the course of this trial, I have not allowed any cameras on you at all, be they still cameras or video cameras in any kind of way, so you have not been photographed during this process. It's up to you at this time, because I guess if you're going to stay and talk to the press, I'm sure they're going to put cameras on you. It's up to you whether or not you want to want to deal with that. I that's your choice, but you're no longer under any obligation not to discuss it. So if you do have, if you do want to stay and you want to answer some questions, then you may do that. And I'm going to just leave that, hopefully, for some kind of orderly procedure for that to be done. Yes. Okay. Let me do this. I'm going to let you, all 12 of you, go back to the jury room for maybe about 5 minutes or so, 7, 8 minutes, and you can decide whether or not you want to come back and talk. And if you do, then those of you who want to, then you may come back. And I'll have the deputy bring you back in here in possibly maybe 5 to 7 minutes or so, okay? So why don't you all go back now? And that give everyone else in the equipment a chance to get out, okay?
Yeah, that was awesome, dude.
That was great.
That was a journey. That was crazy. That was, I think we started that one in November, dude. That was awesome, man. Like,
yeah, it's
and the right outcome.
Yeah, the right.
Have you ever seen? I've watched. You've watched way more than me, of course, but I've never seen a defendant just look so. He's just hanging out. He's like, oh, what'd they say? Oh, okay, cool. Can we go to the house? Like they're always.
I mean,
it was just, huh?
He knew, man. I mean, he knew.
He knew. He had to know.
The right thing, but it's always scary, when you're sitting in that courtroom, and they're coming back with that, because you never know what a jury's going to do.
That's true, dude.
Don't, man. It's like Allison and I have gone through entire trials and felt like we crushed it. Like there's no way they'll come back with a guilty verdict, and they do, and it's like, you just never know what they're going to do, So, but Fire did a great job in closing.
Killed it.
And it's important, man. It's like like he just made the right argument, because it was a fundamental, like, right argument, not, and the state dude was just like stuck in the semantics of it, talking about fucking where he can, where the alleged crime took place, whether it was Oakland County, no one gave a shit about that.
Yeah. He was getting real deep into exactly which part of the state it was done in. And
right. The bottom line was, are we going to allow the government to dictate what we do with our bodies? That was the bottom line. And ultimately, I was surprised when Dizzy gave us that knowledge that it took 9 hours for him to come back.
Me too. That seems long, dude.
Yeah, there was clearly a couple holdouts, that were like, well, it seems to me that he violated the statute, and it was probably like a 7-2 count, or I don't know if they had 12 there, maybe it was 10-2, but and they debated it, and ultimately they convinced, the two holdouts or one holdout, whatever the case may be. I'm curious as to what the breakdown was initially,
That would be cool to know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, man. It's an important trial.
I think there's way more than even what's on Court TV, but there's 2 more Kevorkian trials on Court TV, so we probably will revisit again, honestly. Yeah. To see what comes down the pike next. But yeah, I'm going to pick something different next, and we're going to see what's up. I'll pick it by next week. And anybody that has any ideas, send that to the either publiclybuzzed@gmail.com or straight message me on Twitter, on X. And we'll see what's up. We'll discuss it. Bonnie Bailey came through here with the $5. He should have thought about what he was going to say first. A fool. I agree. His rebuttal was way worse than his initial opening, Kenny. Like at the end, he was literally just grasping for anything to make work. But Bob, dude, thank you so much, brother, man, for coming on here. Appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, sorry I was late, dude. Like that jam cruise.
That sounds fun as hell, dude. Out in the fucking ocean, just jamming every night, every day.
Yeah, it would like the music starts at like 4. And it's they have it all over the ship, and it goes.
It's like a festival on a ship. That's crazy sounding.
It's literally a festival on a ship, and it goes to like 5 a.m.
Dude.
Like typically like a after party, so you're not going to bed till like 6. So
preparing for the next day. Oh, bro, that sounds awesome.
Trying to sleep. Yeah. It was,
have you ever done a cruise before?
Yeah. Well, I've done jam cruise before. So.
I've never been on a cruise. Like, almost have like a weird little fear about it, but I would probably do it.
I don't love cruises, man. Like, if it wasn't like for the music part of it, I wouldn't fuck with it.
You feel real cramped, like.
Yeah, and I don't like having my vacation dictated. It's like if I go somewhere, I want to be able to do what I want to do.
100%.
Do it. So when you're stuck on the ship, like any kind of like all inclusive, you get sick of the food, But it's like, it was great. It was exhausting though. It was exhausting.
I'd say, dude, that's cool. Well, we're glad to have you back, dude. Yeah, man. I missed you on Twitter, dude. I missed you out here doing the fucking live stream. So.
Yeah, it was nice to get the break though. I needed it. I wish I could say it was like a nice relaxing trip, but it was anything but it was fun.
You have to prepare, like, you fucked your body up so much just partying for the last week. To go back into just doing work is going to be like the easy part now. That's weird to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
You really do have to train for like.
That's what I was looking for.
You really do have to train yourself to like get ready for it.
It does sound fun though. That sounds cool, dude.
Yeah,
that sounds
a blast.
Was it funk exclusively?
No, like kind of funk and jam bands.
Gotcha.
It was like Lettuce and Galactic, and there were probably about 15, 16 bands. But we have a lot of musician friends, so it's like a lot of our homies were playing.
That's
so
cool.
It was cool, man. It was.
That's
good
real
fun,
cool.
For certain.
Well, dude, I will definitely be seeing you on these streets this week, I'm sure, brother.
This.
Guys, thank you all seriously so much. Appreciate it. Next time you'll see me for sure will be Tuesday night, 9, maybe, who knows? This week I went on immediately after Jay twice, trying to capitalize on people he had hanging out for Rust. I was covering doing some more Rust coverage, so keep your eyes on that, actually. And hold on, I'm not going to break it yet because I don't know if Jay's announced it, so I'm just going to say this. The Idaho 4, the series episode 3 is not dropping today, but keep your eyes peeled because it's coming very soon, okay? And keep your eyes on mine, Jay's, and Shannon's socials for that. It's coming. All right, Bob, dude, love you, brother.
Love you too. Love you guys.
Have a great Sunday. Great week. Love you guys.
Pete.
Pittsburgh.